All right, Ms. Rivers, are you ready? We're going to get on the record in 10 SC 91115, State versus Sidney Baker. We're going to handle this revocation hearing before we get back to the Marquez Williams trial. Mr. Baker, good afternoon. I'm Judge McBurney.
How you doing, sir?
I don't think we've met. Your case is so old, I wasn't a judge when you got indicted.
Yes, sir.
You are represented by Ms. Hankins.
Yes.
Who's standing by your side. I'm going to put on the monitor and then I'm going to add. So we've got both. There we go. So you see on the screen in front of you, that's Mrs. Collier. She's the prosecutor handling your case. And then you're on the screen as well. So Mrs. Collier can see you. And Mr. Baker, I have a warrant that I signed in late March of this year that alleges that on March 5th of this year, you committed family violence battery, 1 count, 2 counts of battery, and driving while your license was suspended or revoked, all in Fulton County. Those are the allegations. Mrs. Collier helped me understand, because she's done some digging, that you may well have been arrested on March 5th of 2024, but all those hands-on offenses, the family violence battery and the batteries, actually occurred a year or more before then. And maybe there were warrants that were hanging out and they caught up with you. Something happened on March 5th and you got arrested and all this stuff came together. Then I got a probation warrant to sign.
Judge, I do note that for the record, 24 PV 000818 is also on the calendar.
Okay. The only warrant I could get my hands on was this one. Are there multiple warrants? This is a different number. This is, well, it's not a PV. I think it's the warrant associated with, it is, it's the same. I'm holding up the same thing. So this warrant is in connection with all that. You've got 6.5 years left on your probation. Some judge sentenced you to 1 million years probation for burglary. And we need to figure out how we move forward from here. So I'm going to ask Ms. Hankins a couple questions. The first is whether Mr. Baker is stipulating to these allegations that he was arrested for these things. And if so, what your recommendation is. Because if he's not stipulating to it, then we're done for now and we'll set this down for an evidentiary hearing at a later date so the state can bring some witnesses in.
Yes, Judge. Given that the charges themselves are still outstanding, we do stipulate to the arrests.
Okay. But as far as you know, none of the underlying offenses, even though they may have happened years ago, not sure what the statute of limitations angle will be on the misdemeanors, none of those has been resolved.
They have not, to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. What are you recommending I do with Mr. Baker's probation in light of that?
Well, Judge, I know that the state is going to recommend to revoke some time, and we would just ask that you commute that time to the time already served.
All right. What can you tell me about what Mr. Baker has been up to in the last couple of years?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, well, I got my associate degree from Westwood College before they lost their accreditation. I've been working.
What kind of work have you been doing?
Well, I was a caregiver for my mom and my auntie, but my auntie passed away, so I just been caregiving for my mom. I had worked with Mere Home Care, and I just been taking care of my mom, and I just take care of my nephew and my niece because my sister passed March the 1st. I mean, February the 24th, she passed, and we buried her March the 1st. So I had just been taking care of my nephew and niece because we don't know where their father is. So I just been helping mom and take care of my nephew and niece. That's all.
Okay. How does that generate income for you? It sounds like you're helping people, which is good, but
No. I work for all right. See, I kind of like I work for Mere Home Care, and I'm a caregiver for my mom. So while I take care of my mom, I just have my niece and my nephew at home with us. So they pay me to take care of my mom, but I just take care of all of them at one time. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who pays you to take care of your mom?
Mere Home Care.
Okay.
MIHR Home Care, Mir Home Care.
All right. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I got a lot of kids.
What does that mean?
I got 5 kids. I have a 26-year-old, a 25-year-old, 22-year-old, a 16, a 12-year-old, and I have 3 grandkids.
And one on the way.
And I got one on the way.
You have a kid on the way or a grandkid on the way?
Kid on the way.
Kid on the way. All right. Interesting. All right. Officer Evans, do you have any criminal history information for Mr. Baker? How he's been doing on probation the last few years? I don't have a lot of visibility into that.
Yes, Your Honor. I do show a August 13, 2007 forgery in the first out of Douglas County, and then the probation that he's on right now that we're having the hearing for. Those are the previous, his criminal history out of Georgia.
Okay.
And in regards to his supervision level prior to this arrest, it appears that he was on unsupervised probation until this arrest.
It was unsupervised until this arrest.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mrs. Collier, I know you've spent a little more time with this case than I have because you were able to learn these other things that these allegations actually relate to more chronologically distant situations. What do you want to tell me about Mr. Baker and your recommendation?
Your Honor, first of all, I did want to provide the history that I do have as well. I have a total of 6 felony convictions. I have possession of heroin in 2000, sale of heroin, possession of cocaine in 2004. Actually, it's 4 convictions. Possession of cocaine in 2004, and a forgery in the first degree in Douglas County in 2007. And Your Honor, obviously this particular case, so that would make 5 convictions for this particular defendant. Your Honor, this particular incident or incidents that triggered the revocation occurred on 9/28/2023, 10/4/2022, and 7/16/2020. I'll first start off with the arrest. The arrest occurred on March the 4th of 2024, and it actually triggered all of these open cases. All of them are, in fact, open and pending before Judge Mathers with a plea and arraignment scheduled for June the 18th of 2024. The first incident, which is the one that occurred on September the 28th of 2023, that case number is 24CR001041G. And it's an incident that occurred at the Fulton Inn. The innkeeper actually looked at the footage after there was a patron who was sitting in the leasing office with facial and head injury as well as bleeding. He looked at the injury and he spoke to a witness. The witness stated that they saw the defendant tell the victim to get away from his vehicle. Then he struck the victim across the face. The victim was unconscious and fell to the ground. And he also witnessed the defendant shouting at a female to get in the vehicle. And so that was the most recent incident, the victim being Alan Price. It occurred as stated on September the 28th of 2023. That was the battery case. The other incident that occurred prior occurred on 10/4/2022. It was a family violence battery. The case number is 24CR001042G as in goat. Your Honor, this incident occurred, the victim being Latasha Garnett. Latasha Garnett was punched with a closed fist to the right side of her face, causing bruising to her left bicep and a knot on the back of her head. And she also stated that the defendant pulled a firearm from his waist and chambered the weapon. And Your Honor, once again, this was the incident that occurred on 10/4/2022 involving the victim, Latasha Garnett. And the incident
That's my
that
wife.
occurred prior to that
know.
was July the
That's what you told me.
16th of 2020. It was another family violence battery. The case number 24CR 001043 G as in goat. And Your Honor, this was an incident involving the same victim in which there was substantial physical harm to the victim, and it occurred when the victim was struck in the face by the defendant with a closed fist and then thrown to the ground, resulting in visible marking and bruises to the victim. And Your Honor, all of these cases are open. There has been no accountability for any of these cases. All of them are before Judge Mathers, and the defendant has not been in custody long for either of these cases. When he was arrested on March the 5th of 2024, he was in custody for only 7 days, and then he was rearrested on our warrant on May the 14th of 2024, and he has since been in custody for 9 days. So in totality, he's been in custody only 2 weeks for these incidents. And for that, Your Honor, the state is asking for a year to serve. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Ms. Hankins, I'm gonna ask you this question. I don't want Mr. Baker to answer it, and you may choose not to answer it either, and I get it. Ms. Garnett is who to Mr. Baker, and is that someone who is still present in his life?
Yes, Judge. She is the pending mother of his pending child, and they are together, and they're engaged, and they were actually planning to get married. They came down to the courthouse to get the paperwork, and they were going to come back on Friday when they have their weddings celebrations, and in the interim, he was locked up.
Okay. Mr. Baker, Ms. Garnett is expecting when?
She just went and did the little 6-week checkup thingy. They said she was, well, not 6-week checkup thing. She's like a third trimester. They said, I don't know what that means. She's showing. So she like 3 months right now.
Okay. So your best guess is that it'd be your sixth child. Your sixth child is due in about 6 months.
About 5.5, yes, sir.
Okay. Does Ms. Garnett work?
No, I take care of her too.
Pardon me?
No, she's a diabetic, and I take care of her too. She can't work.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hankins, anything else?
Judge, we just ask that you give him credit for the time he served and return him to probation.
Got it. Mr. Baker, I am going to close out your probation in the following way. I'm going to revoke 4 months of your probation as a result of these 4 different situations, 3 open cases in front of Judge Mather, and the arrest, which must have been when you were driving with a suspended license or whatnot, the thing that prompted you to get arrested in March. Not your most recent arrest. I know what did that. That's this. So I am revoking 4 months of your probation. You'll get credit for, you haven't been in very long. I don't mean to suggest that that's easy, but let me finish and then I'll hear from you. But then I'm going to suspend the balance. You have been on probation too long on this case, but that wasn't my decision to make. Someone else created that sentence. You still have these 3 open cases in front of Judge Mather. I suspect that they'll get rolled into this revocation, but I don't control that. That's a Judge Mather decision. You have a lawyer helping you with those cases, and that lawyer may want to expedite how those get handled as a result of this revocation. But you wanted to say something. What's that?
Yes, the thing that the DHS said, that's, we can call my wife on the phone. That never happened like that. I never punched her or anything. And
So I don't want you to say anything more. Hold on. Don't talk about the 3 cases.
Okay.
You may be exactly right, but the reality is someone reported them. The police didn't make it up.
Yes, sir.
And if there's a police report that said she's got a black eye, they saw something. That doesn't mean you did anything. Doesn't mean you started it. Doesn't mean you finished it. But this isn't the forum
Yes, sir.
to litigate, are those cases good? Whether it was that guy near your car or it's Ms. Garnett, that's a Judge Mailer situation. And you'll have a lawyer to help you there. You'll have a lawyer who can get with the solicitor, who your lawyer may end up with a letter from Ms. Garnett saying, baloney, none of that happened. And I take back whatever I said to the police officers. But the police officers had to have been told by someone, probably not you, that X happened to Ms. Garnett and Y happened to Ms. Garnett. And you have decided not to have a trial about that stuff here. Okay?
Yes, sir.
My decision is to, let's close out this probation. You don't need 6 more years of it hanging over your head.
Thank you, sir.
So I am revoking the 4 months. You'll get credit for the time you've been in. You will be out before kid number 6 is born. And that's the important part. Okay?
I got locked up March the 2nd, didn't get out until March the 15th.
Whatever the math is, you'll get credit for it. It's all the same sheriff. And so they're going to have all those dates and you're going to get credit for those dates. Okay.
I got to stay in 4 months.
So you may well be eligible for 2 for 1. We'll see how that goes. But the state asked for a year and I was intrigued by that. But I think it is more important for kid 6 to have dad out, especially if Ms. Garnett is going to need support, which she will. Okay.
Your Honor.
I don't lose my job.
Mrs. Collier.
I did want to ask, as a special condition of the suspended sentence, that he have no violent contact with the victim in the case. And I will spell her name, but I am requesting that there is no violent contact as a special condition of his suspended sentence.
Okay, I think that's a good modification. No violent contact with, and you'll spell the name.
Latasha Garnett, Latasha Garnett, Garnett.
Excellent. All right. So Officer Evans, if you prepare a revocation order along those lines, revoking 4 months, credit for those 2 windows of time in which Mr. Baker was in custody in connection with this. Both those windows are from this year. While it suspends the balance, I do want to modify the conditions in case that needs to be reactivated for some reason to include that condition of no violent contact with Ms. Garnett. Do you need any other information, Officer Evans, from me?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, Ms. Hankins, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I be excused?
You may, and Officer Evans, thank you for rejoining us.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Have a great day.
You bet.
Oh, yeah. Is this your wife in here?
Yeah.
Can we bring Mr. Williams out?
You get the big.
Thank you. I have the statement in a probably more listenable format, at least that doesn't skip over the critical 40 seconds. It was bizarre. Ms. Feely, if you had received this, you should have filed a motion saying, wait a minute, like the only part of this that matters. And it skipped. He's reaching in to pull his wallet out. And then it ends with him sliding the Miranda card back in. He's like, okay, then let's talk. So I was in drug court all morning. I haven't listened to this yet. I can go do that right now. I don't know how long McClure will be on before you get to this, because I could also do it during an afternoon break. I leave that up to you.
Either one, whenever the prefer, to be perfectly honest. That'll be towards the end of his direct.
Would you, okay, let me go listen to it real quickly, because I want to be able to at least get on the record. I've started writing the order. I'm like, he's in custody, he does this and that, because I could see he's got these shackles on his feet, and McClure walks in and says, hey, you're in custody for a murder warrant. I took out. And then it goes dead. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Can you make this up? Yeah, Glenn. I like it.
How long is the video he has to listen to? 45 minutes. He's going to finish with the Miranda warning part. Oh, okay. 2 minutes. Oh. I don't know what that is.
You gonna stay? Good. It was quick. All right, Ms. Rivers, are you ready? Let's get on the record in State versus Williams. This is day 2 of the trial, not including jury selection. It's a little later than I had hoped, about 1:45 on Wednesday. Everyone has been ready since 1. I just had some spillover from drug court. The jury is here and ready to go. Mr. Abate, anything from the state before we bring the jurors in? Ms. Feely, anything from the defense? I have one thing. I had an opportunity last night and just a moment ago to review the custodial statement that Mr. Williams gave on January 11th of last year, 2023, to Detective McClure. I will enter a written order, but I want to put on the record my oral findings so that Detective McClure's testimony can go forward. Finding number 1 is that Mr. Williams was plainly in custody for purposes of the interview. He was not free to leave. That was physically clear. Detective McClure made that additionally clear when he walked in to tell Mr. Williams he was in custody, and in fact that he was being held on a murder warrant that Detective McClure had authored and gotten sworn out. I find, in addition, that the record shows by a preponderance of the evidence that Mr. Williams knowingly and voluntarily waived his Miranda rights. Detective McClure read them to him from a card. They track the basic language that Miranda requires. And so I do find that Mr. Williams was adequately advised of his Miranda rights, that he understood them. He acknowledged that by nodding his head, and that he voluntarily waived them and told Detective McClure that he wanted to talk about the situation that resulted in the murder warrant, and that the statement that followed was freely and voluntarily provided without any hope of benefit or fear of injury. That doesn't make the statement admissible. It still needs to be relevant, or the parts that are played need to be relevant. But it certainly clears the constitutional hurdles that must be cleared before a defendant's statement can be used at his trial. Mr. Abate, you indicated there were portions you wanted to redact. Did you do that and share those with Ms. Feely?
I did, Your Honor.
Ms. Feely, do you have any concerns about the redactions?
No, Your Honor.
Are the redactions plain enough that I should let the jury know that when they're watching the statement, it will seem choppy because there were parts that I indicated needed to be kept out because they're not relevant?
I need abundance of caution, yes, but it's not. I think I was able to make it where it was not very choppy.
Look at you. All right. A deep fake. I'll still let them know. All right. Then let's bring the jurors in, please. He did, but a hard copy would be great. Thank you. There's a sticker on the back. Do you need it? 189?
No.
Okay. Like an industrial strength staple.
All right, for the jury. Judge President County Court.
Thank you, Deputy Gordon. Everyone else can be seated. Welcome back, jurors. Thank you for being here on time. I had one matter from this morning that I couldn't fit in that carried over to 1 o'clock today. So we're getting a late start. I apologize. You had to be cooped up in there for a few extra minutes, but the lawyers were ready to go at 1 as we had planned. I just had congestion from this morning, but we are ready for the state's next witness, who I believe is Detective McClure. Is that still the case?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Well, let's get him up.
They call Detective Randall McClure.
Raise your hand. You swear affirm that testimony you will give. You don't have to. Can you say the spelling name of the record?
My name is Randall McClure, Randall. Last name McClure.
Good afternoon, Detective McClure.
Good afternoon.
Could you please tell the jury how you are currently employed, sir?
I work for the City of Atlanta Police Department, where I'm assigned to the homicide unit as an investigator.
And how long have you been with the City of Atlanta Police Department?
Since 2010, so coming up on what, 14 years.
And
more
of
than
those 14 years, can you tell the jury how long have you been working in the homicide unit?
Almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in July.
Okay. And can you tell the jury a little bit about what your job responsibilities and duties are as a detective assigned to the homicide unit?
Yes. So the homicide unit is primarily tasked with investigating criminal homicides that occur within the City of Atlanta. We also will investigate suicides, deaths that look suspicious, even if they may wind up being natural. We handle missing persons, and we also handle active kidnappings.
And as a detective in the homicide unit, can you kind of explain to the jurors how you were assigned or how a case is assigned to you that you work as the lead detective?
Yes. So we have what's called the rotation, and it's as simple as it sounds. There's about at any given time between 15 and 20 homicide investigators in the rotation. When your name is at the top of the list, the next case that gets assigned to you. You go down to the bottom. The next person becomes the number one investigator in the rotation. They get the next case, then they go to the bottom, and you just climb back up.
And were you employed with the City of Atlanta Police Department in the homicide unit back on December 22nd of 2022?
I was.
And did you get a call, or were you assigned to a homicide that occurred at the Peaks at MLK apartment complex, which is 2423 Martin Luther King Drive, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia?
Yes, I did respond to the location.
And is that location here within the City of Atlanta limits?
It is.
Well as in Fulton County?
It is.
Now, can you kind of explain to the jury why were you, or how, as you were contacted, who contacted you to come to the scene?
This incident occurred in what's our Zone 1. Zone 1 patrol officers responded to a 911 call. Upon arriving to the location, they discovered a person shot and killed. Because of the nature that it was a homicide, they requested the homicide unit respond to the scene to aid in the investigation.
Okay. And I guess, will you talk to the jurors a little bit about when you arrived kind of set the scene for us. What were you observing? How was the scene when you got there?
Sure. So when I arrived, we had Zone 1 police officers had already kind of blocked off the crime scene. The victim's vehicle was parked at the bottom of the breezeway to his building. He was still hunched over, shot and killed inside the backseat of his car. There was a couple shell casings on the ground in front of him and a fragment right beside him. There had already been some witnesses that had been contacted, and I was just given kind of a brief synopsis of what they had determined during their preliminary investigation, which then helped me point me in the right direction of who I needed to go speak with and what I needed to go look at.
And is that common that you as a lead detective with the homicide unit kind of work in tandem or in conjunction with fellow zone or beat officers who respond to the scene first?
It absolutely is.
And do you also, when you respond to the scene, is it always the case that either you're the first detective as it relates to the being assigned to the homicide unit that arrives, or are other detectives within your unit, do they also assist and arrive to help in the investigation?
It could be both. I mean, it's very rare that you're going to be the only investigator that is called to the scene. Typically, that only happens overnight when staffing is at a much lower level. This was not an overnight investigation, and the majority of my team that I work with also responded to assist.
Okay. Now, can you explain to the jurors when someone calls 911, is that captured or recorded within any sort of system within the City of Atlanta Police Department?
Yes, it is. All the 911 calls are recorded.
And with the recorded phone call, is there any data form or form that records the time of the call and things of that nature as it relates to the specific call for the specific address here, the Peaks at MLK?
There's an incident report that's generated from the 911 call.
You tell the jurors, is that incident report called a CAD report?
It is.
What is a CAD report?
I don't know what CAD stands for, the abbreviation, but that is what the actual 911 call that documents when the call is received, when the call is dispatched, what time an officer arrives on scene, what other officers arrive on scene, the notes that are put into the computer by the dispatchers. It contains all of that basic information that goes through the communications unit.
Is all that data you just described that is contained within that report, the CAD report, all kept in the ordinary course of business within the City of Atlanta Police Department?
It is.
I'm going to show you what the market space for 141. If you will take a look at it and let me know if you recognize it. While he's doing that, Your Honor, I'm going to tender what's marked as Stacy at 141 into evidence, certified business record under the exception 902-4 states at 141.
That's the CAD report.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, and you provided that notification to Ms. Feely?
I did.
Okay, Ms. Feely, any objection to the admission of 141?
No, Your
All right, it's admitted.
I do recognize it, sir.
Okay, and is stated in 141 that's been just admitted into evidence, is that the CAD report associated with the case that you've been talking about here and you were assigned as the lead detective?
Correct. This is the CAD report.
And in that CAD report, can you tell the jurors, is there a unique, I guess, police report number assigned to the CAD report that is also assigned to the entire case file as you work it?
There is. It's what's the incident, the case, the report number. All those terms are interchangeable, but yes, there's a unique number associated with that.
All right, so on page one of two. Do you see that in the screen in front of you? It may have popped up that it will say keep muted. Will you just hit the button that says keep muted?
Stay muted.
Stay muted, yes.
Okay, now I'm looking at the screen.
Catching on. Now, can you tell the jurors, do you see on page one where it lists the address?
Yeah.
Location information?
Yes, sir. It's the second group right there says location information.
What does Z1 stand for?
Zone 1.
Okay. And how many zones are in the city of Atlanta?
Technically there's 7. There's 6 zones in essentially the city proper, and then the airport is considered the 7th zone.
As a homicide detective, are you like patrol officers assigned to a specific zone, or are you called out to any zone where a homicide or other serious violent offense occurs?
I go anywhere in the city, any zone.
Okay. And as we are looking at State's Exhibit 141, you see the part where it says incident times.
Yes, sir.
And if you would go to the third line, you see where it says dispatch received.
I do.
And can you tell the jurors what does that, I guess, how is that significant, or what does that represent as it relates to dispatch received and who or what?
The time that the 911 call was received.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what time, according to the CAB report, was the 911 call received by the city of Atlanta 911 center?
They use military time. It says 21:07 hours, which is 9:07 p.m.
Okay. And then underneath that, it says first unit dispatch. Do you see that?
I do.
And can you tell the jurors what does that mean, and what time was the first unit dispatched?
That's when a radio dispatcher that dispatches the 911 calls. So what you have in communications is you have where call takers, they're solely assigned to answer the phones to take the 911 calls. Then you have other dispatchers that communicate with the police. They also communicate with Grady, and they also communicate with the fire department to get the resources to the call. So the dispatch received, or excuse me, the dispatched unit dispatch call is the time that the dispatcher communicating with the police notified the police of the call. That was at 21:08 hours, which is 9:08 p.m.
Okay. And as you kind of go down the list, it says first unit en route. What does that mean? Pretty self-explanatory.
That's what time the police officer, they have to copy the call. So dispatcher will raise the unit, start them to the call, and the officer will copy, notifying the dispatcher that they understand what the call is and where they're going.
Now, right underneath that, it says first unit arrived. Does that indicate when the first unit arrived on scene at 2420 Group Martin Luther King Drive?
It does.
And can you tell the jurors what time did the first unit arrive on scene?
At 21:10 hours is 9:10 p.m.
So roughly 3 minutes after the 911 call was made?
That's correct.
Okay, so you said when you first arrived, after everyone was dispatched and you were called and assigned the case as the lead detective, after kind of speaking with the initial responders with the Atlanta Police Department, our crime scene techs, crime scene unit, are they also on scene?
Sometimes they're on scene around the same time because the crime scene unit will be raised at the same time the homicide unit is raised. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they have to wait on search warrants, in which case they don't want to just wait while we obtain search warrants. That could take sometimes several minutes or hours. But in a case like this where the scene is outdoors and a search warrant's not required initially, they usually arrive shortly thereafter the homicide unit, or sometimes they even beat us there.
And on that evening, when you arrived and were doing your investigation, did crime scene tech Brandy Parker, did she show up and assist?
She did.
And is it common for yourself, the lead detective, and other detectives in the homicide unit to kind of work in tandem or conjunction with the crime scene tech as they begin to process and photograph the scene.
It is common, yes.
And why is that so common, or why is that important that you guys work together as it relates to that?
So that the lead investigator, the detectives, the police can understand what kind of physical evidence is collected from the location. Also, sometimes the responding officers or the investigators possibly get there before crime scene. They're the ones that actually locate the evidence and can point out to the crime scene technician. Sometimes the crime scene technician finds the evidence that the police didn't find. But all in all, it's made to better understand what happened at the incident.
And when you arrived, and you and crime scene tech Parker, what kind of surveying, processing the scene, for lack of better words, is this how the scene kind of looked in State Exhibit 2, which was previously admitted, as it relates to the initial investigation and crime scene that you worked?
Yes, that's a crime scene photo from when we were out there.
Right. And in State Exhibit 2, was the blue Ford Explorer something that was kind of central when you first arrived and as you continued your investigation that night to the case?
Yes, it was.
And were you able to determine who that vehicle belonged to?
Yes,
Was that?
Tyrone Hardesty.
And when you arrived, was Tyrone Hardesty, was his body still on scene?
It was.
And can you describe to the jurors how you, when you arrived, how you found Mr. Hardesty's body?
He was hunched over, leaned over inside the passenger side of the vehicle and the back seat, with his back facing outward.
And is what you described kind of exactly how it states in the 9 that you found Mr. Hardesty when you arrived at after the scene was secured by the first responding officers?
Yes.
And as you and crime scene tech Parker kind of surveyed or walked the area of the initial sidewalk that led into building 1, can you tell the jurors, did you find any evidence of a gun was fired in that general vicinity? Did you find any shell casings?
We found 2 shell cases.
Okay. And did you direct crime scene tech Parker to collect those?
I wouldn't necessarily use the language that I direct them. That's their job. That's their responsibility. It's an understanding that that's what they do.
Right.
So yes, she fulfilled her obligation as a crime scene technician.
Okay, so they were collected.
Yes.
Okay. Did she also collect a fragment that was located near the vehicle?
She did.
Okay. And other than the surveying of that area, photographing and the area in the car, initially, based on your investigation, your initial investigation, was that kind of all that was collected and processed at that time?
Yes, it was.
And when you arrived, was the window to the back rear passenger window to the Explorer, was it broken?
Yes, it was.
And when you arrived, was the door obviously open with Mr. Hardesty kind of halfway in, halfway out?
Yes, just as that picture depicted.
Now, after you kind of did your initial run through or processing of the outdoor part of the scene, did you attempt to canvass for any witnesses who may have heard or saw anything?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors who was the first person that you spoke to that may have information as it relates to the shooting death of Mr. Hardesty?
His girlfriend, Robin Cook.
Okay, and was Ms. Robin Cook on scene still when you arrived and were investigating?
Yes, she was.
And did you speak with her?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors where did you speak with her?
Inside of their apartment. Robin lived with Tyrone on the 2nd floor of that building, and we spoke inside of their apartment.
Okay, and while speaking with her, was Cook able to kind of articulate anything or any information that she may have as it relates to the death of Mr. Hardesty.
Yes, she was.
And in speaking with her, can you tell the jurors, did she see anything or did she see the shooting?
She did not see the shooting.
Okay, got it. Can you tell the jurors why not?
She was inside when the shooting happened.
Okay. And did you ask her as you were talking with her, interviewing Ms. Cook, kind of to explain the events of her day and her day with Mr. Hardesty?
I did.
And was she cooperative and did she do that?
She did. She was cooperative and she explained everything.
And he explained to you places that her and Mr. Hardesty went before arriving to their home at the feature MLK.
She did.
Okay, and she's telling you, well, I guess, tell the jurors, where were they during the day?
They had been out Christmas shopping. They'd gone to Walmart and well, she had been at Family Dollar, but they had gone to Walmart. They had just gotten back from Walmart.
Okay. And did she indicate to you that they had been in the home wrapping presents?
Yes.
Okay. And did she articulate that Mr. Hardesty said that he would be right back, he had to get something out of his vehicle?
Yes, that's what she said.
And either on scene or later during your investigation, did you locate flyers for his entertainment, I guess, job that relates to his music?
Yes.
Now, in talking with her, were you able to, did you ask her what time or if she called 911?
Yes, and she showed me her phone where she called 911.
Okay, and do you recall on her phone or call up what time it showed that she called 911?
At 9:07 p.m.
Now, after speaking with Ms. Cook, did you then begin to kind of continue to canvass the area for witnesses and other evidence?
Yes, and also some of my other co-investigators were also canvassing while I was inside speaking with Ms. Cook. And then I had the opportunity afterward to meet with the apartment manager, Ms. Dana Barfield. And then later on, I went and knocked on some more doors looking for witnesses or video surveillance.
Okay. And that evening, were you actually able to speak with anybody else who provided you with any information that relates to the shooting that night?
Just the apartment manager. She lived on site. She lived in the third floor of that building, and she told us that she had heard the gunshots.
Okay. And I just want to back up. When you were inside 1218 with Ms. Cook, did she indicate that after she heard the shooting, that she picked up their gun that was in their home and kind of ran out with it to go check on Tyrone and see what was happening?
Yes, that's what she said.
And in State's Exhibit 58, is that the gun that she indicated to you that she had picked up?
Yes, that's the gun.
And can you tell the jurors, if you recall, what caliber firearm that is?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I have to refer to my report.
Would looking at a copy of the report help refresh your recollection?
It would. I have a copy with me, or
Okay.
may I?
You may.
Sure, let's just make sure is there only one report? So I don't mean one copy, but I want to make sure that Ms. Feely has the same thing you're looking at.
Oh, okay. Well,
43 pager.
The 43 page,
it's 43 pages.
that's it? Go for it.
So I believe the question is what caliber this firearm is.
I'm just looking at a copy of your report, help refresh your recollection as to the caliber.
It did. It helped.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what is the caliber of the firearm that we're looking at in State's Exhibit 58?
A 22 caliber.
And is that what kind of gun is that? Is it a rifle, a handgun?
It is actually a pistol shaped to look like a rifle.
Okay. And when you say the caliber, does it shoot 22 caliber, I guess, ballistics or projectile bullets?
Yeah, 22 caliber bullets,
Not 9mm.
not 9mm.
Now, in the next day, going into December 23rd of 2022, you indicated you had on scene spoken to the manager. Did you have an opportunity that following day to view video surveillance as it relates to the peaks at MLK?
I did.
And I want to ask you about all the video surveillance so we can admit it at once. Did you continue throughout your investigation to continue to kind of canvass the surrounding areas of not only the apartment complex, but the neighboring businesses around the HE Homes Drive and MLK Drive intersection?
Yes, so the apartment complex was essentially at the corner of Martin Luther King Drive and Hamilton Holmes Drive. And I went around that intersection, that corridor, checking the various businesses and other apartment complexes in the area to pull surveillance footage from.
And did you pull surveillance footage from the HE Homes Plaza, which is located at 2457 Martin Luther King Drive, Southwest Atlanta?
I did.
Were you also able to receive video surveillance footage from the Gordon Plaza, specifically the MLK Food Mart at 2460 MLK Junior Drive?
I did.
And did you also request, and was that request just fulfilled from the Columbia Commons apartment complex located also on MLK Junior Drive?
I did request it and it was fulfilled.
And in the number of times that you attempted to canvass and make contact with residents of the apartment complex, or the residents of Building 1 in the Peaks apartment complex, were you able to get any rings video surveillance footage from the resident at 1316 Miss Winder?
Yes, I was.
Now, I want to show you what's marked the State Exhibit 188. You'll take a look at the USB or jump drive contained inside of the State Exhibit 188. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I recognize it.
And how do you recognize it?
You had previously shown me what is contained on this USB drive.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what is or what are the contents of State Exhibit 188?
This is the surveillance footage that I've collected during the course of this investigation.
And does all of the footage of the contents on State Exhibit 188 fairly and accurately depict the video surveillance that you received from each one of the businesses and apartment complex you just spoken about?
It does.
This time around, the state would tender what's been marked as State Exhibit 188 evidence.
Ms. Feely, I trust you know the different pieces. This sounds like, wisely so, a collection of otherwise admissible surveillance footage, but you're familiar with the different pieces?
Yes, sir.
Any objection to this exhibit?
No.
It's admitted.
Thank you. And on State Exhibit 188, I neglected to ask you, within that jump drive, can you explain to the jury, does the city of Atlanta have a video surveillance system kind of throughout the city called APD Fuses?
We do. It's run by the Video Integration Center unit. The Atlanta has several security cameras all around the city that we as the police have access to that are not, the difference would be lots of businesses have their own security cameras that we actually have to go approach the businesses or the private residents and ask for their permission to look at it. But the city has their own cameras set up at various points throughout that we can access at our will from our computers.
And were you able to obtain any footage from the APD Fuses system from the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and HE Homes Drive in that area that we've been speaking about with Peaks at MLK apartment complex, in between that and the Columbia Commons apartment complex?
Yes, I was.
Is that also contained on State Exhibit 188?
It is.
Now, back up. So the next day on December 23rd, did you go back to the Peaks at MLK to view the video surveillance that we've spoken about?
I did.
And in your review of the video surveillance footage, could you find or could you locate, or was there a camera, it's a better way to say it, that was pointed in the direction of or captured the actual shooting itself?
No, there was no camera that pointed at the shooting.
Can you tell the jurors initially, when you are looking for anything relevant to your investigation, did you kind of narrow down a time frame to first start looking?
I did at the time of the shooting.
So at that time that you're initially looking, are you looking for anything after the 911 call from the CAD report that you have referenced from 9:07 on?
Correct.
And were you able to locate any camera footage from any of the cameras on the actual property that you believed at that time to be relevant to your investigation?
I was.
Okay, and can you tell the jurors where were those cameras kind of located on property?
They were located at the front entrance, the front driveway of the apartment complex. And even though the apartment complex has a Martin Luther King address, that the driveway is actually off of Hamilton Homes, and there was cameras that point towards the entrance and the leasing office of the complex.
Okay, and the first camera, do you recall that you were able to kind of view and find to be relevant? Can you kind of explain to the jurors what you saw first?
Yes, one of the cameras captured the gate because building 1 had an exit gate that you could leave the apartment complex from the breezeway, from the bottom floor breezeway. You walked out a gate and then you were outside the apartment complex in what would best be described as a public area. And during the time frame which I was looking, right around the time of the shooting, there was a person that exited that gate right about the time of the shooting happening.
And from State Senate 188, from the camera labeled parking from the MLK apartment complex we've been talking about. Let me share this. Looks like my left is kind of. While I'm trying to get this up and running, I'm going to show you state's exhibits 153 through 179.
Okay.
Then state's exhibit 187.
Okay.
Let's take a look at those.
What's the numerical range for this?
153 through 179, and then 187, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, do you recognize states exhibits 153 through 179 and then 187?
I do.
And let's start with the grouping between states exhibits 153 through 179. How do you recognize, let's start with 153 and then we can do a grouping for the rest.
The
153, what is it?
It's a picture from Google Maps that I took from, I placed this picture inside of my lead report as reference of where the incident was.
Okay. And the remaining exhibit states that 154 through 179, do those photographs fairly and accurately depict screenshots from the video surveillance that we've spoken about here just a few minutes ago?
They do.
Okay. And then lastly, states exhibit 187, do you recognize that Google map?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jurors how you recognize what area it is?
How this is the area of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive in Hamilton Homes. And what is depicted in this picture is the point of interest as it relates to this investigation, where the homicide occurred, where the establishments were that I pulled video surveillance from.
Okay. And does it fairly and accurately depict the area that we've been talking about that you described previously as it relates to the Peaks at MLK apartment complex, and then all the way stretching from the intersection of HE Homes and MLK Drive over into or by the Columbia Commons apartment complex?
It does.
This time around, the statement tender was been marked as states exhibits 153 through 179, and then states exhibit 187.
Any objection to the admission of those exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
They're all admitted? Yes, sir.
Do you think we can get the top TV turned on?
We can. Deputy Gordon's not here. I can't read. The button is on the side. Thank you for flagging that. I can see that. You guys get cozy there. Did I get it?
Nobody allowed.
Yeah. You'll take down a easel and a big monitor. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so do you see in the screen in front of you the video clip from the MLK Peaks apartment labeled parking?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and can you tell the jurors in the top left-hand corner, is that the timestamp for that specific video?
Yes, on my screen, there's a little window that's kind of making it harder to read, but yes, there is a timestamp and a date.
Okay, and what is that timestamp?
It is December 22nd, 2022 at 9:05 PM.
And can you kind of orient the jurors where in the complex for the Peaks at MLK are we?
This is building 1. This is Tyrone and Robin's building. This is the other end of the breezeway from the photo you saw of his car. That would be if you'd walked and gone straight out, that's where it would come out at. That breezeway would come out by his car. So this is the other end. And this is the main entrance where you see behind that tree there would be a gate. This would be the main drive.
Okay, now I'm gonna fast forward to 9:06 into this clip. Specifically, I'm gonna start the video at 9:06:05. Okay, at the very end of that clip, do you see an individual walking out of that gate that leads, as you described, to inside the building, area 1, first floor?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and you said, can you tell the jurors, if I can get there, what time does he begin to exit building 1?
That's 9:06 and 17 seconds PM.
And what time was 911 called again?
9:07 PM.
Now, as you continue to view the video surveillance, were you able to get footage? You described that that's the entrance where that roundabout was, where you can come into the apartment complex. Were you able to get footage that kind of went further down, I guess, the hill as it moves towards the intersection of H.E. Holmes and Martin Luther King Drive?
Yes, I was.
And I'll show you state exhibit 153 real fast. Okay, in state exhibit 153, can you tell the jurors, is that kind of the front entrance, or is that the front entrance to the complex that the peaks at MLK that would lead you to what we've been talking about, the intersection of H.E. Holmes and Martin Luther King Drive?
That is the front entrance, yes.
So if you're looking at the front entrance and I'm standing the way to go left, or excuse me, right and then left, I'm looking at the picture. Where does it take you if you were to go left, coming out of the apartment complex?
Coming out of the apartments, turning left, going that way, that will take you to Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
Does that take you closer towards to some of the areas that, or the locations that we've been talking about? We've got video surveillance for just like the MLK Food Mart and the Columbia Commons apartment complex.
Yes, it does.
So the street that we see on 153 is Hamilton E. Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and to the left, meaning going south on Hamilton, that next intersection is with MLK.
Yes, sir. To reiterate, it's confusing because the apartment complex has a Martin Luther King Jr. Drive address, but the entrance is off of Hamilton E. Holmes Drive.
And looking at states exhibit 187. Overview or Google map of the entire area that we've been talking about in MLK Drive and H.E. Holmes. Can you, for the jurors, kind of circle where on the screen the MLK peaks, the peaks at MLK apartment complexes?
Yes, sir. So I know you asked me to circle, but because it goes off screen, that essentially top right corner is the apartment complex.
Okay, and at the top right corner of the apartment where you circled, the red circle, you see where the kind of the 280 is in front of the street?
Yes, I do.
Is that H.E. Holmes Drive?
Right, 280 is H.E. Holmes.
And if you were to go down from 280 down towards the middle of the exhibits, takes to 187 and reach the intersection, can you tell the jury is that the intersection of H.E. Holmes Drive and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive?
It is.
And can you circle for the jurors the area where the MLK Food Mart is located?
Yes.
So for the record, it's on the exhibit states exhibit 187, kind of in the middle bottom part of 187 where it says J&J Beauty Supply.
Yes, and there's a knife and fork.
Okay. And that's just the plaza that's located.
That's the plaza.
Okay, and can you tell the jurors across the street kind of to the right, if you're looking at the exhibit of, this is Google, what establishment is that?
This building, this structure right here is a Chevron gas station.
Okay, and then if you were to go across the street, across MLK Junior Drive, where there's a American Deli sign, what plaza is that?
That's the Holmes Plaza.
And were you able to pull footage from the Holmes Plaza as it relates to the suspect we've seen most recently in the first video, dressed in all black, exiting building one?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And then lastly, on this exhibit, can you circle the general area where the Columbia Commons apartment complex would be located on the exhibit?
It appears to be cut off because it would be right over here.
Okay, so it would be to the furthest left on the screen, you're looking at the exhibit head on.
Correct.
Okay. Across the street from where the Columbia Commons apartment complex is, can you tell the jurors, is there anything?
Oh, I apologize. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can I circle it?
Yes.
I apologize. So again, the apartment complex would continue off the map.
Okay, so you circled the bottom half or the bottom area of States of 187, indicating that's where Columbia Commons is. So would you agree that Columbia Commons and the peaks at MLK are almost catty corner or diagonal from each other as it relates to their positions on the map in front of you?
Yes.
And if you investigating that area and canvassing it, can you tell the jurors about how far are the two apartment complexes from each other?
I don't recall the distance, but that's just a block or two away, and it's a easy walk to and from.
All right. Now, on the screen in front of you, is this a second view of one of the video surveillance cameras that you were able to get from the peaks at MLK?
It is.
And I'm gonna fast forward to 9:06:28. While I'm pulling it up, is that the area that you kind of just, we saw at the very entrance and front view in State Exhibit 153?
Correct. That's just a different angle of the entrance.
We will come back to that. So as you continue to watch the video surveillance footage for from the peaks that MLK that you initially had access to, did you see the same individual we saw in the first video labeled parking exiting building one, kind of go down the entrance ramp and exit ramp of that apartment complex?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe for the jurors anything about that you took note of or that you recorded in your report?
That it was just one person leaving wearing the same clothing as the person captured coming out of the gate. at the same time.
And take you at 155. Is this a screenshot of the video from the what's labeled the front path, which is the pathway kind of leading out of the apartment complex for the MLK Peaks?
It is.
And you see the same male wearing all black in the screen exiting.
I do.
And is that just seconds after the 9:06:21 timestamp that we saw in the previous camera footage?
It is.
And at 9:06:39, kind of continuing going down the exit and entry into the Peaks at MLK, do you see the same male in all black? And did you recall indicating that he kind of was running down the ramp?
Yes.
Now, you said after kind of, was that all the kind of the footage that you were able to initially collect from the Peaks at MLK upon the first try in getting footage from that location?
From their surveillance footage, yes.
Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about the APD Fuses camera system. Can you kind of tell the jurors where is or are those cameras located as it relates to kind of all of the locations that we've talked about today in the intersection of H.E. Holmes and MLK Junior Drive?
It's at the intersection of H.E. Holmes and Martin Luther King Junior Drive in the southeast corner of the intersection, or at the southeast corner of the intersection.
Can you describe for the jurors kind of the area that, I guess, how large of an area those cameras are able to, I guess, pick up as it relates to that entire intersection? Does it pick up a pretty large scale of the entire intersection as you're looking at the footage?
Yes, you get a wide view of the intersection.
And are you able to see the same individual kind of crossing the streets of the intersection at 9:06:50 into that recording?
You are.
And is that what we hopefully are looking at on the screen in a second now?
Yes, that's the footage.
And wow, I'd speed it up, but I don't want to play, so I'd be thankful for that. So we're getting to that time, can you kind of orient the jurors? Where do you see the white plaza in the middle back of the video surveillance footage?
I would say yes, and it's in the essentially the forefront of the middle of the footage is the plaza. And if you direct your attention just to the right of the plaza is a sign for the various businesses. And that's the area where you will see the suspect cross the street.
And you see right now there's a red truck that's pulling across the street. Behind the red truck, is that the area where the Peaks apartment complex is?
Yes, the Peaks would be, this is H.E. Holmes, and the Peaks would be going off the screen to the right and just on the right.
So like there's a guy standing on a sidewalk, someone's walking towards him. If Now he's crossing the street, but that sidewalk runs up to the entrance to
Correct.
the peaks that we saw of HE Homes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And behind the plaza that's kind of beige that you talked about a few seconds ago in the middle, is there kind of an alleyway that lines the back of that plaza?
There is.
Okay, and at 9:06:50, can you kind of circle for the jurors where you saw or you see the suspect
Yes.
walking?
I tap on the left, right to bring up the
Yes.
pin. Yes. Okay.
Now, see if this works. You,
I click the trash can.
No, there's an arrow that's a circle.
Okay.
Tap that. There you go.
now kind of zoomed in, can you recircle where you see the same male in all black?
Sir.
Okay. And in where he is walking, in the direction he is walking, is that towards the alleyway that you described that you're able to get footage for behind the beauty supply store?
It is.
And in the screen in front of you, I'm gonna back it up. Do you recognize this as being the video that you were able to collect from the beauty supply store?
I did.
And the person we saw running or jogging for a brief second, is that the same suspect that you initially were able to see leaving the peaks at MLK a little after 9:06?
Yes, it was.
When the video went away, that's not because you closed it. The system kicked you out.
So what I'm gonna do is, we will go back to screenshots for right now. And it states exhibit 158. This, it says in 158, a screenshot of the footage that we saw very briefly of the alleyway that is right behind the plaza that we've been talking about.
It is.
Okay, and can you tell the viewers what is the timestamp on that specific screenshot, but from the video surveillance that you were able to collect?
That's December 22nd, 2022, 9:07 and 39 seconds PM.
Now, you talked a little bit about earlier the footage that you were able to retrieve from the MLK Food Mart. Initially, was that footage just of the outside of the building?
It was.
Can you tell the jurors specifically the first footage that you received, kind of describe to them the angle that the video camera shows that you first received that business?
It's an exterior camera on the edge of the food mart that points across Martin Luther King Jr. Drive to that plaza at the west side of the plaza. So the direction that the suspect was running, it points towards the front side of that.
does that camera kind of capture the across the street from the food mart, the plaza where the beauty supply store that we talked about, where the kind of the alleyway kind of no longer becomes an alleyway and enters into the parking lot of that plaza?
Yes.
Okay, and is that what we're looking at right here?
Yes, that's the exterior camera.
In a minute, I'm gonna have you point out the area that you see the person in all black walking as it relates to the footage that you collected for. Okay, so quickly, as we zoom in, can you orient the jurors at the very top of the screen, as you see kind of the parking lot with the lines, top of the monitor?
Yes, that top right corner would be the parking area for the plaza we've been talking about.
And right around here, you see a little blurry, but the individual that you saw at the alleyway or walking through the alleyway, and then, turning into a run.
I do.
And can you circle for the jurors where you see him walking?
I can, oh, well,
You see the feet, the top of the screen? Let me back up, please. Right by, if you're looking at the exhibit, there's some bushes. And if it's easier for you, you can look at the large monitor and point for the jurors.
could you go back a little bit and play the video so that, okay. You pause it, right? Oh, well, okay, well,
There's still a foot.
if I may.
Yes.
This is a foot, I'm not sure if you can see from the video, but you could see him walk, start to run this way. And that right there is his foot.
All right, so you stay right there. I'm gonna hit play now and point to the jurors when you see him begin to walk. Okay. And it's stage 159. Quickly, you see the exhibit where you have drawn kind of arrow on a screenshot of the footage that we just looked at.
Yes, I did that.
And what does that arrow that you drew on the exhibit indicate? What is it?
It's pointing towards the suspect.
That's where you first see him kind of exit the alleyway and into the parking lot.
Yes, sir.
Now, you had talked about earlier that there is the HEO's MARTA station is not far from the area that we've been discussing, correct?
It's next door to this plaza.
And did you contact MARTA about any possible video surveillance cameras that kind of pointed towards the street as it relates to that area?
I did.
Did they have any cameras that pointed towards the crossing or the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and H.E. Holmes?
They did not.
Now, as you kind of continued your investigation and canvassing for footage, can you tell the jurors as the days went on, I guess, what did you do next?
Well, I went back to the Fusus camera, the camera that the city of Atlanta owns, with the orientation now that I knew that the suspect went behind the plaza, came out on the front end and continued traveling west on Martin Luther King. When I went back to the Fusus camera, which is the camera that captured him crossing over H.E. Holmes behind the plaza, I could tell from the camera that he crosses the street of Martin Luther King. So he crosses essentially after he comes out of the plaza and he's still traveling west, he then crosses south over Martin Luther King. So when I saw that, I went to the businesses right there to see what video surveillance that they had.
Okay, and it's one of the businesses that you went to the Grand Auto Center located on, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
It was, yes.
Can you kind of point to the jurors where in State Exhibit 187 would that business roughly be?
Which is on a pointer circle.
Whatever's easiest for you.
This would be the auto center.
Okay.
Car repair shop, garage.
And when you went to the garage and spoke to the manager and other individuals who worked there, were you able to view the video surveillance footage for December 22nd of 2022 around the times that we've been talking 9:06 on?
I was able to view it.
Can you tell the jurors what did you see?
That the suspect continued to walk west past the business.
Okay, and after you viewed the footage and saw the same person continue to walk west down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, were you able to actually collect that footage like you have and we've seen with the other video surveillance footage?
Unfortunately not. This was one of the only place that they did not have their password to access it so I could pull it, and I had never had any luck getting back in touch with anybody that could allow me access to the system.
We then kind of walked next door to the T-Mobile wireless building to see if they had any footage, I guess from the outdoor area of their business.
I did.
And then did they have any cameras that were operable that
I did not.
Now, after going to those business establishments, the locations, did you then go next door to what you previously had circled as the Columbia Commons apartment complex?
I did.
And when you were able to go next door and speak with members of the management staff, did you make a request for video surveillance footage for the times that we've been talking about, 9:06 and ongoing?
Yes.
And why did you do that?
To see if they had any footage, if possibly the suspect had walked into the apartment complex.
And were they able to immediately fill that request that day at that time? Or was
No.
it something you had to wait for?
I had to wait a brief period of time.
And while you were waiting, as you continue to go into the next days of your investigation, did you go back to the Peaks at MLK complex and see if you could request or get additional footage from that time, from earlier periods of the night?
Yes, I was able to view the footage from earlier in the evening.
Can you tell the jurors, after you received that footage and reviewed that footage, what did you see?
That the suspect walked into the apartment complex at approximately 8:44 p.m.
And it states that 161 is this a screenshot of what you just described of the suspect entering the entry driveway of the Peaks at MLK at 8:44 and 25 seconds.
Yes, it is.
And the camera footage that you talked about beginning of your testimony as it relates to the initial footage you received from the Peaks. Right here is the road entrance, the parking, and then the front gate area. Is this the same kind of cameras that you had previously looked at just 30 minutes prior?
That's exactly it. Yes, sir.
And it states exhibit 162 from the camera labeled front path. Can you tell the jurors what time did you see the suspect continue to walk up the pathway?
At 8:44 and 45 seconds PM.
And it states exhibit 163. Can you tell the jurors where do you see the suspect?
He is entering in through a pedestrian gate that just enters into a general area of the apartment complex as opposed to a breezeway.
Okay, and that's at what time?
That's at 8:45 and 5 seconds PM.
Now, based on that, were you also able to pull footage of Mr. Robinson and Ms. Cook arriving home at their apartment 2118,
Yes.
excuse me, 1218?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell the jurors what time can you see them entering in the apartment complex?
That's Tyrone and Robin in their vehicle at 8:48 PM.
And I want to back up for just a really quick second. As part of your investigation, the day after you initially responded to the scene where Mr. Robinson was dead, was his vehicle towed to the APD annex homicide cage to be processed?
Yeah, Tyrone's car was towed to the annex to be processed.
And was the processing done by a crime scene tech Parker the next day?
It was.
And were you present and did you participate in the processing of that vehicle?
Yes, I was present and participated.
And can you tell the jurors, as the vehicle was being processed in the cage or at the APD annex cage area, you locate a Walmart receipt?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors the time that it indicated that the checkout from Walmart was by Mr. Robbins, excuse me, Ms. Cook and Mr. Hardstein? If looking at your report will help refresh your recollection, by all means.
Please.
When you're done, just look up.
Ready.
Okay, I'm just looking at your report, help refresh your recollection.
It does. You're asking what time the Walmart receipt was at?
Correct.
At 8:24 PM.
8:24 PM.
Yes, sir.
And the exhibit in front of you from the surveillance footage that you received from the Peaks MLK shows them arriving home at approximately 8:48 PM.
Yes, sir.
Now, after reviewing that footage, did you again speak with Ms. Cook and actually show her some of the video surveillance footage that we talked about today?
I did.
And in talking with her and showing her that, did you ask her if she recognized the individual that we've seen throughout the footage, the male dressed in all black?
I did.
And did she recognize him?
She did not.
Okay. And when you initially spoke with her, did she tell you that she heard 4 to 5 gunshots while she was inside the apartment?
Yes, she said she heard gunshots.
Now, based on what you received from the Peaks MLK, did you then do the exact same thing as it relates to the surveillance footage that you canvassed and requested for many of the other locations we talked about?
Yes, I went backwards.
And did you go backwards and request additional footage earlier in the evening for the APD Fuses camera?
I'm able to pull that myself, but yes.
And did you pull that?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors What hours did you then pull as you backed up from the earlier footage that you pulled roughly around 9:07?
From the 8 o'clock hour to the 9 o'clock hour.
Okay. And when you did that, can you tell the jurors what you found or what you were able to see?
Yes, that essentially the suspect took the same path of travel to the peak at MLK as he did when he left the peak at MLK.
And here in States Exhibit 164, we're looking at a screenshot from the APD Fusus camera. Can you tell the jury what is the timestamp on this screenshot from the clip that you pulled?
December 22nd, 2022 at 20:42 09 hours, which is 8:42 and 9 seconds PM.
And you see the arrow in kind of the middle left-hand side of States Exhibit 164?
I do.
Why did you draw that arrow, put that arrow there in that screenshot?
That's the suspect walking across Martin Luther King towards the Holmes Plaza.
So it's basically here crossing the street on the side that the Columbia Commons apartment complex is on, and crossing to go behind the alleyway that we talked about for the beauty supply store
Yes,
in the direction towards the pizza. Okay,
correct.
and it's 165, just an additional shot of the same video surveillance camera footage, but at a later time at 8:43 and 16 seconds.
It is.
And the middle right-hand side of that exhibit, do you see the arrow there?
I do.
And why is that arrow there?
I drew that arrow to point to the suspect as he's crossing over H.E. Holmes, going towards the incident location, the peak at the peaks at MLK.
Okay. Now, after receiving that footage, I'm talking to Ms. Cook again. On December 29th, 2022, did you contact and did you receive the footage requested from the Columbia Commons management?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors, were you able to locate the suspect within that video surveillance footage that you initially received?
I was.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors a little bit about what you saw and the initial footage that you received from Columbia Commons based on the time frame that you requested?
Yes, they were able to track the suspect walking into the apartment complex and through the apartment complex and actually into a specific apartment unit.
And what apartment unit was that?
Apartment 4104, 4104.
And on the screen in front of you now, is this the initial footage that you received from the Columbia Commons?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you see in the middle left-hand side of the screen on the Columbia Commons clip of the male dressed in all black.
I do.
And you tell the jurors the direction that he's coming from, is that the entrance, or is that how you enter the apartment complex?
Yes, the entrance would be where he's coming from.
The direction that he's heading, can you tell the jurors, is that towards apartment 4104?
Yes, it is.
And can you, for the jurors, what is the timestamp on this clip?
This is December 22nd, 2022, 21:10 hours, 57 seconds. That's 9:10 and 57 seconds PM.
The very end of that clip, is that what you see the suspect enter into apartment 4104?
It is.
Okay. Now, when you see that he goes into apartment 4104, can you tell the jurors kind of what the next steps of your investigation was as a result of that?
Excuse me. I went to the management at Columbia Commons Apartments, and I requested the list of residents in apartment 4104.
How did you tell from that? Maybe you already explained this. He just goes into a wall. I mean, presumably he's going into an apartment, but there wasn't a flashing sign above it that says 4104.
So these videos, thanks. This video surveillance system is set up by Watchtower Security. They are top notch. And unfortunately, they have the security system because there was another homicide at this apartment. And when they provide footage, not only do they provide synopsis of what happened, they provide all the raw footage for you to go through to verify that their synopsis is correct. And they also provide a map where they show all their camera angles and how they capture the apartments, and they're familiar with which cameras capture which apartment numbers and which buildings and which areas of the parking lot and so on and so forth.
So the footage we saw shows someone in black entering a building, but it doesn't show. Is there a different angle that you were able to review that shows that's 4104? Or if you walk down that hallway, the only door that he could have gone in is 4104. That's what I'm asking.
The ladder, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
the ladder, when you walk down the hallway, it lines up with the what you see on camera lines up with apartment 41.
Okay.
To the judge's question, if you look at the screen, Detective McClure. And before play the full clip, can you, obviously it's a little skewed because of how we zoom, but you see the stairs on the right hand side?
I do.
And right directly behind the stairs, is that where apartment 4104 is on the wall?
Right directly behind it? No, sir.
The circle for the jurors where apartment 4104 is located.
Further down.
There's a, looks like, well, wait.
If I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yes.
There's a second set of stairs. It looks like in the background is 4104 directly in front of that second set of stairs.
Then we ask you a question. Do you see on the screen before you where the suspect, person in all black, he goes to turn?
Yes.
So he is in front, or excuse me, behind the first set of stairs. You see that? So right here, is this a set of stairs?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Behind it, you see the same kind of like bar or design.
Okay.
Is that another
Yes.
set of stairs?
Yes. Okay.
It's the only apartment in between those two set of stairs, apartment 4104, where he turns.
Yes. Yes.
No, that is confusing and way too many questions to get to the very simple answer. So I apologize. Now, do you continue, you said you backed up your, you continue to canvass and backed up the time frame in which you were looking for video surveillance. Did you do the same thing with the MLK Food Mart?
I did.
And when you went to the Food Mart, I'm gonna show you screenshots for time purposes. Were you able to locate video surveillance footage containing the same suspect?
I was.
And states it at 168, which should be in front of you now. Can you tell the jurors, or circle for the jurors, where you see the suspect and states it at 168?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the timestamp on that same person entering into the MLK Food Mart?
December 22nd, 2022, 8:38 and 50 seconds PM.
And do you get footage of, and you can erase that if you want, of the suspect entering into the convenience store?
I do.
States Exhibit 170. Do you see that person at the register to check out?
I do.
And what is the time step for him checking out?
8:40 and 28 seconds PM.
And can you tell the jurors, and can you see in States Exhibit 171 anything as your investigation continued that became, I guess, important to what he was purchasing?
A water bottle.
Right. And in States Exhibit 172, can you tell the jurors on what time the suspect in all black leaves the MLK Food Mart?
Yes, it's at 8:41 and 14 seconds PM.
Is seen testified there. Did you testify earlier that he was seen kind of walking up the entryway of the MLK Peaks at MLK apartment complex at approximately 8:44 PM?
Yes.
Okay, so while you are there getting this additional footage on the 29th of December, do you speak to Mr. Sengupta, one of the management staff at the food mart?
I did.
And can you tell the jurors the footage that we've seen in the clips in State Exhibits 170 and 172 most recently? Did you review that footage with him?
I did.
Can you tell the jurors, in reviewing that footage with him, was he able to provide you with any information about the person that you have been tracking in all black from the Keats at MLK and at this point to the Columbia Commons apartment complex?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And what was he able to tell you and provide you?
That he recognized the suspect, that he knew he lived in the apartment complex, the Columbia Commons apartment complex, just behind the convenience store with his mother and his brothers. That he'd essentially seen him grow up from an early age, and he was just a common person at the store.
And at any point during your, at this point, did you know the actual identity of that person?
At that point, no, sir.
Okay, and the contextual clues that he was providing about how he was familiar with the individual in all black, did you tell him any of those details, or did he come up with those on his own?
Come up with the all.
Like, did you tell Mr. Sengupta that you knew that the individual lived in Columbia Commons?
Oh, no, I didn't.
All the information that he provided to you, was that independent knowledge that he had that you were hearing for the first time as you reviewed the footage with him?
Correct.
Now, based on the information that you have requested from the Columbia Commons management staff, the leasing information, did you eventually receive that information from management?
I did.
Okay, and in the States Exhibit 183, is this the leasing information, or the information you received as it relates to the residents in apartment 4104?
That is.
Okay, and upon receiving that information, can you tell the jurors kind of, did you use law enforcement tools and databases to pull pictures of Ms. Lewis and Marquez Williams, Darius Williams, and the other members of the residents on that lease?
I did.
And in talking with Mr. Sengupta prior to receiving this information, was he able to provide you actual details, like he knew that the person was at the age of 20 or 21, somewhere within that range?
He did. He was able to do that.
And that his knowledge based on the frequency of the customer coming in and out, that he had graduated high school within the last 3 or 4 years.
Yes, he was able to provide that information.
Okay. And once you were able to get kind of the photographs of the individuals on this list, specifically Marquez Williams, did you go back and speak with Mr. Sengupta?
I did.
And prior to speaking with him again, going back to December 29th of 2022, was he able to tell you other details, like he knew that the person in all black that he was familiar with and recognized had no piercings that were visible or recognizable?
Yes.
Things of that detail.
Yes, he was.
And at that time, did you show him what is previously entered into evidence as states exhibit? In State Exhibit 150, the photo that you showed to Mr. Sengupta?
Yes.
Okay, and when you showed it to him, what was his response?
He was 100% certain that was the person on the video surveillance wearing all black.
Was he 100% certain that was the same person he saw on December 22nd of 2022 throughout the 8 to 9 o'clock hour?
Yes, that was what I was essentially trying to say.
Now, after Mr. Sengupta provided you with that identification, did you go back to the Columbia Commons and kind of do the same thing where you work backwards as it relates to video surveillance footage for their system?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to have that request fulfilled by Ms. McLester and her team?
I was.
And at 20:35:43, so at 8:35:43, can you explain to the jurors, orient them where we are in the Columbia Commons apartment?
This is the same angle we've looked at previously where we saw the suspect walking towards his apartment from this direction. So his apartment would be down in that building.
See the suspect coming from the area of apartment 4104 at 8:35 and roughly 52 seconds into the 8:36 hour.
I do.
Can you tell the jurors on the screen now, part of the clip, do you see where you see the suspect in this video clip?
I think I briefly saw him, but my picture is blocking the top right corner of my screen. I think it's blocking their screen as well. But this orientation would be leaving Columbia Columns apartment, walking the top of the screen where you see the car stop or the brake lights. That would be the entryway towards Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
8:37, 12 seconds. what area of the Columbia Commons apartment complex are we looking at here?
This is the leasing office is the main structure you see. The suspect's walking in front of the leasing office right now, walking towards Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
And the clip that we saw where your face was blocking and walking on the screen in front of you, behind the gate, is this the area that we were looking at as the sister walked towards the front entrance?
Yes, the camera was oriented pointing towards the gate.
And this is at what time?
This is at 20:37 and 30 seconds. So that's 8:37 and 30 seconds PM.
And can you orient the jurors? Where is this part of the clip at 20 or 8:37 and 42 seconds?
Yes, he is walking right towards Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is the street at the top of the frame with all those cars traveling.
If you were to go right from the driveway of the apartment complex towards the street, where would that take you?
That would take you towards the food mart, the convenience store.
Okay, so after you had gotten that footage that we have just seen from the Columbia Commons, did you go back again and attempt to canvass and speak to any residents at the peaks at MLK?
Yes.
Okay. And when you went, did you go with other detectives, specifically Detective James?
Detective Jenkins and I went out there.
Okay. And when you went out there, can you tell the jurors, were you able to actually make contact with anyone?
Yes, we were.
And who were you able to make contact with?
Miss Smith.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors where did Miss Smith live within the Peaks at MLK apartment complex?
So this building one, once again, Tyrone and Robin lived on the second floor. Miss Smith apartment was on the third floor. Not directly above them, but above them and across the hall.
And in speaking with Miss Smith, was she able to provide you with any information that was relevant and useful to your investigation?
She was.
Can you tell the jurors what was that information?
She heard gunshots the night of the shooting. She heard someone running down a breezeway, and then she pointed out to us 2 shell casings that were at the end of the breezeway.
Now, can you tell the jurors prior to that night, that day, where January 3rd, 2023, why had you not been able to speak to Ms. Smith or done any investigation as it relates to the third floor of that building?
So it was my understanding that when I was speaking to Robin the night of the homicide, that some of the other investigators had gone around and knocked on doors. We didn't get in touch with anybody that evening. And then once I started really getting into investigation, I was very focused on obtaining as much surveillance footage as possible before it was overwritten or expired.
And is it unusual as you and members of your team investigate that people don't want to talk to the police?
No, it is not unusual.
Something that you run into frequently as you investigate other homicides throughout your, in the last 5 years of being a homicide and the 14 years that you've worked with the Atlanta Police Department?
Yes, there are oftentimes people that do not want to talk to the police or get involved in criminal investigations.
Why is that?
That there's several reasons. The fear of retribution. Some people don't like going to court. Some people just don't like the police and they don't want to be helpful to the police. Everyone has their own reason or reasons.
And in speaking with Ms. Smith, they're telling you about what she heard outside of her apartment, did she direct you into any sort of area where she had seen or found things that could be relevant to your investigation?
Yes, 2 shell casings.
And apartment, excuse me, in State's Exhibit 65, do you see the general area vicinity in which you were able to locate those shell casings?
I do.
Okay, and I'm gonna move to the picture. Do you see? There we go. In State's Exhibit 66, the placards or evidence markers 1 and 2.
I do.
What are those?
Those are the shell casings.
Okay. And upon Ms. Smith kind of directing you towards those, did you call in crime scene techs to help process the photograph scene?
Yes, crime scene technician Shane Chavez responded to aid in processing the scene.
And were you present when he collected those shell casings?
I was.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's going on. The State's Exhibit 182. You will just take a look. Take 182 and inside the bag to let me know if you recognize what's inside.
I do recognize this.
Okay, and how do you recognize it, and what is State's Exhibit 182?
I recognize this is a standard packaging for how we, the Atlanta Police Department, including officers, investigators, as well as crime scene technicians, would package evidence collected at a crime scene. Specifically, in this case, it's shell casings. Crime scene technician Chavez collected these shell casings and packaged them first in this brown bag, labeling the brown bag with the relevant information. And then we have a computer system that we use that's operates off barcodes to help keep track of where when evidence is moved around, whether it's entered into a property or evidence, whether things go to get tested, maybe they get checked out for court, and there's a label with the barcode on this.
And so are the State's Exhibit 182 the 2 shell casings that were found in the 3rd floor staircase and balcony that Ms. Smith had directed you all towards and to?
Yes.
This time the state would ask to tender State's Exhibit 182 into evidence.
Because that didn't come in through Mr. Chavez because there was the date question.
Yes.
Got it. Any objection to 182 now coming in, Ms. Feely?
No.
It's admitted.
And the date that those were collected was on which date?
The 4th, January 4th.
Again, the reason for, I guess, the delay in those, the collection of those shell casings and I guess the canvassing of the rest of the building, can you explain to the jury kind of the delay or the lapse of time from when the homicide occurred on December 22nd into when you went and spoke to them on the 3rd going into the 4th?
Yes. To reiterate, one, it was a lot to gather as much of that surveillance footage. It's very time consuming on top of working other investigations. The other thing is sometimes when you wait a period of time and you let people cool down and you reapproach after things have once again cooled down, sometimes people are more willing to open up to you. Or like in this incident, this was right before Christmas. There were people that were out of town or just didn't want to be bothered. So going back later on, had better luck getting in touch with people.
And did you knock on other doors as it relates to residents on the 3rd floor of Building 1?
Yes.
And in the event that, again, no one answered or you were unable to speak to individuals, is it common practice for you to leave your card so people can contact you if they have any information?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you a second about shell casings, because you said you found 2 shell casings here on the 3rd floor, and there were shell casings, 2 of them as well, found on the bottom level, so over the balcony of the archway that we're looking at.
Okay.
Can you tell the jurors, how, when a firearm is fired, specifically a 9mm pistol, can you explain to the jurors when a gun is fired, what happens to a shell case?
The shell casing that fires the round is ejected from a semi-automatic weapon. It is ejected from the ejection port of the weapon. And if it's semi-automatic, it will automatically load the next round so that when you pull the trigger again, another round will fire. Most people are right-handed. Most guns are designed to eject to the right. That way you're not, when you're shooting, you're not, if it's to the left, it'll eject in front of you to shoot away from your line of sight. And does that, I guess that answers the question.
Yes, and when they're ejected, they hit the ground, hit the wall, do they immediately come to a rest at all times, or do they roll and bounce and come to a final resting place?
They're subject to physics, just like lots of other things. So depending on what they hit, oftentimes, if they hit grass, they're probably going to stay about where they were. If they hit concrete, they're more likely to bounce around. If they hit a wall, they're going to bounce off the wall.
Someone is leaning over the balcony that you can see 66 with their arm extended, pointed towards Mr. Hardes's vehicle, like he's leaning in and firing a gun. Would that explain why shell casings were found on the ground floor of the apartment complex walkway?
Yes. In other words, some of the shell casings could have ejected behind and stayed on the top of the breezeway. Some of them could have bounced off and landed on the ground below.
From the shell casings that you found in that the photograph that we're looking at states it's 66. I know we talked about the ones that were found on the ground were 9mm. What was the caliber of the shell casings found at markers 1 and 2?
These are 9mm as well.
Now, after you left the Peaks at MLK, did you receive a phone call from a resident at 1316 of the Peaks at MLK, so building 1, apartment 1316?
Yes, on the 3rd floor breezeway, yes.
Can you tell the jurors why was Ms. Winder, the resident of that apartment, calling you in reference to?
I left my card. She had a Ring doorbell camera. I left my card. She had contacted me. She said that she didn't want to be involved in the investigation, but she would look through her footage and provide any footage during the time frame that I requested.
Okay. And what was the time frame that you requested?
8:40 p.m. and 9:10 p.m.
And do you recall how many clips that she was able to provide you?
There was 2 videos that she was able to send me.
And the screen before you, is this the first video clip that she was able to give to you?
Yes, it was.
You see, I guess the time frame of the clip. I can't get the bottom part to go away, but let me hit play and see if that helps.
I think, if I may.
Yes.
There it is. It's at 20:53. Now it's 20:54 p.m. So it's 8:54.
Okay. And I want to back the clip up. As you were watching it, was there anything in that clip in the hands of the suspect here at this point you had identified as Marquez Williams from Mr. Sangupta in his left hand?
A gun.
Okay. And what area? So Miss Winder lives in an apartment 1360. In reference to states that 66. I'm not going to pull it up because we're going to sign in and out and it's too much. But the area where she's walking from, where is he coming from on the 3rd floor?
He's coming from the picture that we just saw where the shell casings were at the end of the breezeway near where Miss Smith lives.
So if I were standing where the Ring camera is, let this guy walk by and then walked all the way to the end on the right, I'd get to that white, looks like a fence or something at the edge of that arch that you could look down into the parking lot.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Straight shot.
Yes, sir.
And on the left-hand side of the screen, do you see the stairway?
I do.
Is that the second set of stairs that would lead down and out to the front side of building 1 and out towards the exit of the peaks at MLK?
Yes.
Second clip that she gave you. Tell the jurors, what is the timestamp for the second clip that she was able to provide for the time frame?
If I may.
Yes.
That's December 22nd, 2022, 21:04:38. So that's 9:04 and 38 seconds.
Okay, and you see in the, it's the bottom left-hand corner, the bottle that's rolling as the suspect ran across the street.
I do.
Okay, and in your investigation, how is that significant to any of the footage that you had previously seen as it relates to the MLK Food Mart?
It looks exactly like the water bottle that Marquez had purchased at the MLK Food Mart.
That what we're looking at here in States Exhibit 179. On the, I guess in front of the suspect where the cash register is. You'll circle with the jury. Now, on the following day, on January 5th, after speaking with Mr. Sangupta and reviewing all of the video surveillance that we have spoken about here today, did you, on the 5th of January, attempt to make contact with Marquez Williams at his apartment at 4104?
I did.
And were you able to make contact or see him that day?
No, I was not.
Okay, and after attempting to see him at his home, did you call him on phone? Can you tell the jurors when you called on his phone number, what was the result or what did you find?
That the number was disconnected.
And after making those attempts and doing all the steps that you just described in your investigation, did you swear out arrest warrants for Mr. Williams for murder and aggravated assault and other relevant charges?
Yes, I did.
After swearing out those warrants in front of a magistrate court judge, what do you do next?
You complete what's called a fugitive package. The Atlanta Police Department has a team called the Fugitive Unit. And when you obtain warrants for someone that is not in custody, meaning they're out there in the public, you provide information to them and it is their responsibility to go and capture that person.
And after filling out or giving that packet over to the Fugitive Department and the Atlanta Police Department, does APD have a crime lab?
They do.
And are the ballistics evidence, the shell casings that were collected on scene, are they preliminarily kind of examined by examiners here, Detective Kilgore?
Yes, the Atlanta Police Department has a crime lab with an investigator assigned to it that can look at shell casings.
And can you tell the jurors, as a result of that, that in looking at that, provide any interest or further your investigation?
Yes, he was able to determine on his
Objection
analysis.
hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll move on.
Okay. So you all should disregard anything that Detective McClure said in response to that question.
But as a result of him looking at the shell cases, were they to be processed by other agencies, whether it be the Georgia Bureau of Investigation or a private firearms examiner, as it relates to their opinion in regards to the shell casings and whether they were fired by the same gun, different guns, things of that nature.
Yes, that's the process.
Okay. Now, on January 11th of 2023, did you get information that the defendant, Marquez Williams, had been arrested?
Yes, I was.
And after his arrest, can you tell the jurors where was he taken?
He was taken to Atlanta Public Safety Headquarters.
Okay. And did you I guess, meet or go to the Atlanta Public Safety Headquarters upon his arrest?
I did.
And at that time, did you make any sort of attempts to interview the defendant?
Did.
Okay. And prior to interviewing the defendant and speaking with him, did you read him what's commonly referred to as his Miranda rights?
I did.
You advised him he has the right to remain silent, that he has no obligation to speak with you, has the right to a lawyer at any point, and can end that interview at any time as he's speaking with you.
I did advise him of the rights.
And after advising him of his rights, did he agree to speak with you?
He did.
And any point prior to reading the defendant his Miranda rights, after reading him his Miranda rights, did you threaten him in any way? Did you make him any sort of promise or benefit in any way if he was to agree to speak with you?
No.
Was his decision to speak with you voluntary and done within his own free will?
Yes.
Right. And
Sorry, you need to stop. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think we're gonna break, but just before you play, are you about to play the
yeah,
statement?
yes,
Okay, then, do you have any other lead-in questions to that?
just like 3.
Are you good for 2 more questions or not? We're not. Okay, we gotta take a break. All right, we will be back in about 10 minutes. This is our afternoon break. Remember, we're gonna end at 5 today so we can get to graduation. So we'll get you back in here shortly.
All right,
Mr. Abate, tell me what you think about scheduling now. It's almost 4. We haven't played video yet. How much of the video are you gonna play?
I'll probably play from Miranda up until about a little less than 40 minutes.
4:00. So we're not finishing. You're not resting today.
No, it doesn't look that way.
Okay. After Detective McClure, I know we have a medical examiner, and we have Mr. Leopard. Anyone else? Oh, and Mr. Sprinkle for a phone call.
Which will take less than 15 minutes.
That's not long. The ME shouldn't take, well, I don't know about the trajectories, but I don't think that's particularly long.
Should be very quick.
And Mr. Leopard is simply, the shell casings all came from the same gun.
Yes,
Okay. So you'll finish in the morning, but not this afternoon.
that's correct.
Can Mr. Leopard be here tomorrow?
Let me go find out if he can. Is there a way we could?
Yes, we'll stop this so he can testify. But before you go, we'll just do that during the break. Anything else from the state?
No, you're right.
Okay. Ms. Feely, anything from the defense? All right, let's be back in a little less than 10 minutes. And Deputy Gordon, during the break, we're off the record. If you could get more, there's a stack of note cards here. If you could just replenish, that would be great. Thank you.
I was trying to stop asking questions. That's why it took me. But there was a few, he was going to make sure that you can call people after his appointment.
Yes,
I
okay,
told
but we're
him.
not going to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to get the cocaine.
We've been through that. I've been through that. That's not real.
I told him that alone is not enough. We're like, I was like, I don't know anything that is relevant. I was like, she's very experienced and she'll bring out if it's relevant.
We can't get out.
Yeah,
Just bring it. We're not gonna be able to get in the dog's collar report either. It's not
Yeah.
relevant.
yeah,
And it's a proper character.
yeah.
But I mean, we did talk about that.
Okay.
And we talked about the way to get in is, you know, because
Mhm.
we get it,
Okay.
and we can make.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And do you want for next?
Yeah. Might as well.
You were gonna release Dr. Sullivan at least?
Yeah, I guess I'll send
We
it.
have to stop a call. I mean.
Yeah, I'll send it home. And then I guess she can get back person tomorrow. She's not happy about it. Yeah. If one got called, guy would have, because it took a second. We started at one, I think we'd be close to finish. She may be the only one, so the level will be like that. I hate Zoom and that. It hurts. Even when you like prepare, make it right, never is actually right.
If we do Leopard next, the detective Cole's gotta come back. Cole's gotta come back tomorrow too.
Well, yeah, well, yes, because you'll be back for cross. I think we get pretty close to finishing his direct because that will take maybe 15 minutes. So let's say he's done like 10 after 4. We'll watch the video, which will take us to 5. And then I don't have much left to ask him after the video. So then you come back for your cross and Murray. And then we have solo. Whatever.
And then the phone call.
Yeah. Come on, that's what, 45 seconds.
Dr. Sullivan got there, they're sending her home. For what? Dr. Sullivan got here. Oh.
Oh, do you think I should go talk to her before we?
No, you
Oh,
want
okay. So when they receive bodies with their hands covered, it's because they're trying to test for them.
Mhm.
And they're like just covered with like some type of,
Yeah. I don't know exactly. This.
what's called, but
Yeah.
it's just covered, okay. I think, real quick, we just maybe need to tell him again that that stuff can't come out. He was just asking several questions about that to remind him.
It's not, I don't understand why you can't shoot somebody because they've got.
Or have drugs, that's what, I mean, first, I was like, that's not relevant to why you'd be afraid of him if he has drugs on him. And even gang stuff, I was looking it up, and he even bring up, the case law is not good for bringing up gang.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna, we won't be able to mention it, but they will see it. And so if they know anything about it, they'll pick up on it, but if they don't, they don't, you know, we can't point it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
How would you do that? How are you doing my bucket? No. Alright. This. Yeah, cool. Is it that insulting? I think that's insane, but I guess that's also true. How did it do that? It's all design. That's true. That's not true. Yeah.
Ms. Rivers, are you ready? Okay, we're back on the record in State versus Williams after our afternoon break. Mr. Abate, how do you want to navigate the rest of the afternoon?
So I think it's okay with Your Honor. Can we put Mr. Leopard on the stand? We'll get him down probably about 15 minutes and then continue with the clerk relates to the statement.
Yeah, here's the dilemma with yes is the answer, but we have to stop at 5 because we have a juror who needs to get out of here for that graduation. My guess is we'll be in the middle of the statement at 5 o'clock and we can stop. It's just sort of suboptimal to not get all the way through the statement. So I don't know if you've got the ME and we could just do Leopard and the ME. And then if you think we could finish them both, I don't know that there'll be a big cross-examination of either. I don't mean to preclude any cross-examination at all, but maybe we could get both those done. I'll just explain, look, we had to get these witnesses up because we have an hour with 55 minutes. If you think we could do both those, even if that means we stop at 4:45, those witnesses are done and it's just McClure.
I think that's a great idea.
Ms. Feely, any objection to that? I'll explain to the jurors why we're doing it.
No.
You all right with that? Let's bring the jurors in.
So is it okay if I go ahead and release Detective McClure for the rest of the day?
Yes.
All rise for the jury.
So you're getting all stuff. I don't think you touched your water. Trial partner doesn't have to help you with all that.
Mr. President, time for.
Thank you, Deputy Gordon. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a little pivot. Detective McClure's testimony to include the playing of the recording of Mr. Williams's interview with Detective McClure would take us past 5 o'clock, and we're going to honor the 5 o'clock stop. So Detective McClure is going to come back tomorrow to finish his testimony and play that. We're going to fill the remaining 50-something minutes we have with 2 different witnesses. This can happen. It's procedurally okay. I can direct that. I just didn't want you to be thrown like, wait a minute, there was this guy on the stand talking about a statement, and you're going to hear from 2 other witnesses now. You were going to hear from them tomorrow morning instead. So we're going to do that. That all should fit in between now and 5. If not, we'll stop at 5 and have whoever's on the stand come back. Okay, Mr. Abate, who is your next witness, knowing that McClure is coming back in the morning?
State's gonna call Brian Leopard. Mr. Brown is going to do his direct.
All right, Mr. Leopard, come on up.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you will give truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth of God. I do. You are not see. Can you say this with the name for the record?
Yes, my name is Brian Leopard, BRIANLEPPARD.
Good afternoon, Mr. Leopard. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Mr. Leopard, would you mind telling the jury what you currently do for a living?
I am a independent firearms and tool mark examiner.
And would you mind explaining to the jury what that means?
Yeah, so routinely I'm called upon to examine firearms evidence, to determine whether or not a bullet or cartridge case was fired from a specific weapon. If no weapon is submitted or found, to determine what type of firearms those items are consistent with being fired from. I also can perform function testing on weapons, serial number restorations, muzzle to target distance determinations, as well as other various examinations of firearms and firearms evidence.
And with respect to the knowledge, training, and experience that you had to get to that point, can you tell the jury a little bit about your educational background and then pivot to your employment history in that field?
Yes. So I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Georgia Southern University. I was employed with the GBI from 2005, from May of 2005 until June of 2022. During that time, at the beginning of that time, I underwent an extensive training program of approximately, excuse me, a year and a half. That was both academic as well as hands-on actual casework training, where I would work cases under another qualified examiner. I have successfully completed a number of different armors courses on the function and troubleshooting systems of different weapons. I have attended numerous different manufacturing plant tours to see the ammunition components as well as the firearms produced in the factories. I've successfully, excuse me, I have worked approximately 2,000 actual firearms cases. I've examined between 2,000 and 3,000 weapons. I have performed thousands of microscopic comparisons, and I have successfully been tendered as an expert witness in firearms and ballistics in the state of Georgia, as well as Alabama, as well as federal court, approximately 130 times.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to tender Mr. Leopard as an expert in the field of firearms examination, and tool analysis.
Ms. Feely, do you wish to examine Mr. Leopard on that topic? And if not, do you have any objection to Mr. Leopard being qualified as an expert in the field of firearms examination and tool mark analysis?
I don't have an objection. I would ask if I could have a copy of the CV.
Sure. If one of the two prosecutors could get that to Ms. Feely. Mr. Leopard, because there's no objection, I will qualify you for the purposes of this trial as an expert in the fields of firearm examination and tool mark analysis.
Mr. Leopard, would you mind telling the jury when you receive shell casings? Well, let me backtrack. Before we get to that, would you mind explaining to the jury what a cartridge or a live round is?
Yeah, so a cartridge or a live round, as it's often referred to, is the ammunition component that is unfired. It contains 4 parts. Those are the cartridge case, which is sort of the home that everything lives in. Excuse me. On top of that cartridge case is the bullet. That's the projectile. Excuse me, sorry, as it's sometimes referred to. Inside of that is the gunpowder. That's the propellant that causes, or that is ignited to cause the bullet to travel down the barrel. At the bottom of that is the 4th component. That's the primer. The primer is the pressure sensitive material that when struck by the firing pin of the weapon causes a spark, which causes the gunpowder to ignite and to cause a combustion to make the weapon fire.
So, for instance, with respect to a semi-automatic firearm that ejects a shell casing, in that particular instance, would the projectile or bullet from that live round separate from the casing once the firearm is discharged?
Yeah, when a firearm is discharged, the bullet travels down the barrel, out the end of the barrel, and then eventually onto some sort of target. The cartridge case that's left over, that's been spent, as it's referred to sometimes, that's fired, is either one of 2 things. In a semi-automatic type weapon, it's extracted and ejected from that weapon onto the ground or to a surface around the shooter. In other types of single shot weapons or revolvers, the cartridge casing will stay inside of the weapon.
So in that instance where a firearm is discharged, or semi-automatic firearm in this particular case, is discharged, and shell casings are recovered, are there testings and analysis that you can perform or people in your profession can perform to identify whether or not all those shell casings were fired from one firearm or multiple?
Yeah, so I spoke previously about having a gun and being able to compare cartridge cases or bullets to a specific firearm. If no firearm is submitted, if no firearm is covered or submitted to me for analysis, I can then just do what's called an inter comparison of those like caliber items to each other. So basically, if the cartridge cases are the same caliber, I then attempt to determine, are those all fired from one single weapon by looking at the microscopic marks that are left on those by the firearm, that are left there by the tools that produce the firearm, or are they fired from numerous different weapons? Are they fired from 2 or 3 or 4 or however many have you different weapons? The purpose of that is to determine, is there just one weapon involved with those particular cartridge cases, or is it multiple?
And so what are the specific indicators that you look at to determine that?
Yeah, so first of all, we look at the class characteristics. The most obvious class characteristic would be the caliber. Is the caliber, for instance, a 9mm or a 40 or a 45? Typically, we don't compare different caliber cartridge cases to each other because they typically, with a few exceptions, aren't going to be fired in different caliber weapons. Once that sort of threshold is met, as if it's okay, they're the same caliber, then we look at the class characteristics. We look to see further, are there, what shaped firing pin do they have? Do they have a hemispherical firing pin? Do they have a rectangular firing pin? Do they have what have you? If those 2 items are still the same, then we look further at the individual marks. I like to compare class and individual marks to automobiles. A class of automobile would be a pickup truck, or even a Chevrolet pickup truck, or a Ram, I almost said Dodge, a Ram pickup truck. Those would be classes. The individual would be the VIN number or the license plate on a specific automobile. So the individual marks are what we look at to determine if all the items of that particular class and caliber were fired from one gun or from multiple guns.
And then transitioning to projectiles or bullets that separate from the casing once the firearm is discharged, what sort of indicators do you look at to determine whether or not those projectiles were fired from a particular firearm in your profession?
Yeah, so similarly, to back out just a little bit, when a gun is manufactured, the barrel of the weapon typically has lands and grooves. Those are high spots and low spots that are placed in the barrel of the weapon. And they're placed there in a specific number and a specific twist. So that might be 6 or 8 or 9 or 5. And that is either going to be a right hand or a left hand twist. So a right hand twist, as it comes out the barrel, is spinning counterclockwise. The left hand is spinning the other way. So we first look at those class characteristics. And are they the same? Are they 6 right, 5 right, 6 left, or what have you? Then we look at, and of course, we look at the caliber to see if the caliber is the same. And I apologize, I forgot the rest of the question.
No, you're fine. I was just asking you specific indicators as it relates to projectiles and what those may be in making your determinations whether or not they're fired from the same firearm.
Yeah, so we're looking at those class characteristics, and then we go, as we do in the cartridge cases, we go a bit further, a bit deeper, and we look at the individual characteristics. Those are the microscopic nicks, burrs, and imperfections that are left on, in this case, the barrel of the gun as the tools produce the gun.
And if you were to have or to receive a firearm from law enforcement, in addition to projectiles and shell casings recovered from a crime scene, would you then be able to make the determination whether those specific shell casings and those specific projectiles were fired from a particular firearm?
Yeah, in a case like that, where we do have a gun submitted that's in question, we can take the gun and test fire the gun. What that allows us to do is recover bullets that are known samples, known test fires from that weapon, and allows us to recover known cartridge cases that were test fired in that weapon. We can then compare each of those items against the questioned evidence to determine if any of those items, bullets or cartridge cases, were fired by that weapon.
Now, is there any test that you are aware of that would allow you or anyone in your profession to make a determination as to whether or not a projectile was discharged or separated from a particular shell casing?
Practically speaking, no. You might question whether or not marks are left on, again, excuse me. You might question whether or not marks are left on the bullet by the cartridge case as it separates. But typically speaking, those marks are going to be overridden by the simple fact that that bullet travels down that barrel of that weapon. And those marks are now the overwhelming marks on the bullet.
And in your, given all the expertise that you've just testified to and your knowledge of, have you used that to testify as an expert witness or to work with both prosecutors and defense attorneys?
Yes, I have.
And I guess in transitioning to the reason why you're testifying here today, were you given items of evidence, specifically shell casings and projectiles, to perform analysis on with respect to your testimony here today?
Yes.
Okay. And when you received that evidence, did you generate a case number for yourself and your company to identify those specific pieces of evidence?
Yes.
Would that case number be 2024 CR 020801?
Yes.
And did you perform analysis as it relates to those shell casings and those projectiles?
Yes, I did.
And did you generate a report with respect to your findings?
Yes.
I'm going to approach you with what's been pre-marked for identification purposes as states 139. Take a quick look at that and let me know if you recognize states 139.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize states 139?
By the case number that was previously mentioned, 2024 CR 020801, and by my signature on the report.
And is that a true and correct copy of the report that indicates your findings with respect to the evidence you analyzed for this particular case?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, the state, at this time, the state would seek to move states 139 to evidence.
Is Feely any objection to making states 139 part of the record?
Yeah.
It's admitted.
I'll approach you with states 181A through 181C, states 182, all of which have been previously admitted into evidence. With respect to those four states 181 through 182, were those the items, when you have an opportunity to take a look at it, were those the items that you received with respect to your requested analysis on this particular case? And I believe states 182 was actually opened up and the shell casings were taken out of the bag. I don't believe that was true for 181A through C.
Yes. Yes, these were the items, some of the items examined in this case.
Okay. And so with respect to your report, would it be correct to say that you received a total of 4 9mm shell casings, 1 fragment, and 5 projectiles recovered from the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
Okay. And those, I guess I should say, 10 pieces of firearms evidence, that was what you performed analysis on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so with respect to those 4 9mm shell casings that you received to conduct analysis on, what were your findings?
My findings of those 4 cartridge cases was that they were all fired from 1 firearm and that they were consistent with being fired from a Glock 9mm pistol. That's provided as an investigative lead and is not intended to be an all-inclusive list.
And with respect to the 1 fragment that was recovered from the crime scene, what was your analysis with respect to that fragment?
Yeah, there was a single outstanding fragment that was not identified or even compared to the other items. It lacked item or lacked, I'm sorry, it was unsuitable for comparison. Basically what that means is it doesn't have any, again, excuse me. I just left another trial testimony and I'm a little dry. That item didn't contain any individual characteristics that would allow me to do any sort of comparison on it to the other items. So it could basically was not usable in a sense.
Does that mean you couldn't tell if it was a 45 caliber projectile or a 9mm? It was so beat up or malformed.
Correct. There was no comparative value there or otherwise.
Okay, because I'm not asking about comparison, does it match this or that? But in looking at that projectile, you're not able to tell because of the degree to which it was deformed, the caliber of the projectile. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. It was noted that it was a single lead core. So as such, being a lead core, it's the center of the bullet. So it doesn't contain any information that the jacket would be covering it. The jacket is what picks up the markings from the barrel. And so as such, it doesn't have any marks imparted on it that give us the caliber or any other type of comparative value. Okay.
I meant to approach with this as well. I'm going to approach with states 189.
Yes.
So 189 on the exhibit list is what McClure was about to get in. 190? Okay. Whatever it's labeled. What is it? Does it have a sticker on it?
189.
189. Okay. So let's keep that as 189 and we'll change the exhibit list.
Understood. Do you recognize states 189?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize states 189?
It has the same case number and identifying information, as well as my initials and date on the seal the case number that we previously spoke of.
And are those the projectiles recovered from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, they are.
You're on, and are those the projectiles that you performed analysis on with respect to this particular case?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move 189 into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Feely, to 189?
Yeah.
Admitted?
So with respect, and I noticed in your report, with respect to the items of evidence that you received, you yourself provided designators such as item 1A or item 2A, 2B. Would you mind explaining to the jury what designators you put on what pieces of evidence that you analyzed?
As it relates to the state's exhibits?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So state's exhibit 181A and 181B are both my item number 2A on my report. States.
And what is 181A and 181B, just for the jury's edification?
Yes, so states 181A and 181B are both a single 9mm cartridge case. 181C on my report is item 2B, and item 2B is a 9mm metal jacket. States, this is the brown bag. This is states 82. I'm sorry, 182. That also contains two 9mm cartridge cases. Those are noted on my report as item number 1.
And based on your observations from holding the envelope packets, those would be the items recovered from the Atlanta Police Department, correct?
Yes, those are the brown bag. They were outer package was a brown bag.
Okay. So now, after discussing the 4 shell casings and 1 projectile recovered from the Atlanta Police Department, let's transition to the Fulton County Medical Examiner's evidence provided to you. What was the designation that you provided in your report for those 5 projectiles in states 189?
States 189, so I labeled those items 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, and 3E. Those items, and I'm sorry, I forgot the last part of that question.
Just what was the designator as it relates to your report corresponding with states 189?
Yeah, so what states 189 has 5 individually packaged clear boxes inside of it. That's how items are typically packaged, or one of the ways they're typically packaged when they come from a medical examiner's office. And so they were designated by myself as 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, and 3E.
So in following your conclusions with respect to items 1 and items 2, what were your conclusions as it relates to those 4 shell casings?
So as it relates to the 4 shell casings, item 1 and item 2A that I previously spoke of, they were microscopically compared, and I was able to determine that they were fired from a single firearm, and that was consistent with being fired from a Glock 9mm pistol. Again, that was meant as an investigative lead and was not an all-inclusive list.
And the investigative lead that you're discussing is not the whether or not the 4 firearm or 4 shell casings were fired from the same firearm. It's a lead as to what firearm discharged those shell casings. Would that be accurate? Or
correct. It would be if you're going back to my automobile analysis or comparison, it would be that they look like the shape of a particular type of truck. So these have markings, class characteristics that are consistent with a certain type of gun. However, they have individual marks that allow me to say that they were fired from a single gun.
Now, in moving on to item 2B in your report, which is the fragment or 9mm metal jacket recovered from the Atlanta Police Department and states 181C. What was your analysis with respect to that?
Trying to find it. 181, I'm trying to find that item. And I believe, I'm not sure if it was asked previously or not, or if I misspoke or not. 181C was, I believe, referred to previously as an item from Atlanta PD, and it being a fragment. We'll get to it in a minute, but the unsuitable fragment was one of the fragments from autopsy.
Okay.
But this item was actually compared to, and I don't believe how you asked it there, but this item was compared to those other items from autopsy.
Understood. And so the one that you were previously talking about where you said it was unsuitable for comparison, that was with respect to the fragment in the autopsy?
One of them, yes.
Okay. So with respect to the one recovered from the Atlanta Police Department, what was your conclusions with respect to that?
Yeah, so that's item 2B.
Mhm.
That's one of the small manila envelopes. That was compared with items 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D. That's 4 of the 5 packages here. And I was able to determine that all of those were fired from the same firearm and that they were consistent with being fired from a Glock 9mm pistol. Again, only provided as an investigative lead and not meant to be an all-inclusive list.
So to recap, all 4 shell casings were fired from the same firearm per your examinations. 4 of the projectiles recovered from the autopsy, as well as the fragment recovered from the Atlanta Police Department, were all fired from the same firearm. And 1 projectile recovered from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office was unsuitable for comparison. Would that be an accurate statement?
That's all accurate, yes.
Okay. And what would, in your experience, render a projectile unsuitable for comparison once it's discharged from a firearm?
A number of different things. It can either be a separation of a lead core and a jacket. It can be a jacket that is mangled and damaged to the point where it goes, and usually that's caused by it going through a hard object. That can be glass, that can be a wall, a car door, a door in a house. Lots of different hard objects here that it can hit, and it will damage it to the point of being unsuitable, having any marks that are of any comparative or identifiable value to either give it a class and a caliber or to do any other further comparison.
And Mr. Leopard, based on your knowledge, training, and experience with firearms, can a .22 caliber pistol or rifle discharge a 9mm round?
No, not without some major modification. Those are 2 completely different calibers. The .22 is much smaller. Just to put it in caliber sort of similarity, 9mm is an imperial measurement. A 9mm is about a .38 caliber, so 0.38 inches, whereas a .22 is 0.22. So the bullet is not quite, almost twice as big in terms of diameter.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. I have no further questions.
Ms. Feely, do you have questions for Mr. Leopard?
I do. My retrieve states 58.
Is 58 an image?
Yes.
It should be, I don't know how numerically organized they are, but how about we put it on the screen? Great. Thank you, Mr. Butty.
Good afternoon, Mr. Leopard.
Afternoon.
You mentioned that you often in your line of work get the actual firearm itself to analyze. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you actually get the firearm itself, tell the jury what kind of test you can perform on it.
Yeah, so I think I previously spoke. I can take the weapon from a comparative point of view. I can create test fires from that weapon. That way I would have a bullet in a cartridge case or multiple bullets in cartridge cases. that I test fire through that weapon that give me a known standard from that weapon. I can then use those items individually to compare against question items to determine if those question items were fired from that weapon.
This weapon states Exhibit 58. Have you ever seen this weapon before that you know of?
No, I haven't.
This weapon was not submitted for your review.
No, this is the first time I've seen anything of this sort.
What type of firearm is this?
It appears to be some sort of pistol. I can't really identify it past that.
Because it's a picture, right?
Correct.
And you can't really examine a picture in the same way that you would the firearm itself, right?
Correct. It's not as good as having it in your hands.
And you mentioned a revolver is the type of firearm that doesn't emit shell casings, right?
One of them, yes.
So if you and I were to have a gun battle and I had a semi-automatic and you had a revolver, there would be shell casings around me. Say we were both bad shots. I fired 4 shots, you fired 4 shots. There would be shell casings around me, but there would not be shell casings around you.
Theoretically speaking, yes. If you're both in an open field with nothing around you to catch those cartridge cases, yours, did you have the revolver?
I have the semi-automatic.
So if you have the semi-automatic, your cartridge cases would end up on the ground in a theoretical sense, and the ones in the revolver would stay in the revolver unless they're manually removed.
That's all I had, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank
Mr.
you.
Rao, any follow-up?
Obviously, states 58, that's, from your knowledge, training experience, isn't a revolver, is that correct?
Doesn't appear to be now.
And would it surprise you if the evidence has shown that that's actually a 22 caliber rifle?
I wouldn't guess based off the picture. I see some things in it that look like a 22 magazine in that the magazine is to the lower left. But to be sure, I would want to look at the item itself physically.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate your time.
All right. Any questions from the jurors for Mr. Leopard? All right, counsel, I need to see you real quickly, please. Stay right there, Mr. Leopard. Bless you. Mr. Leopard. Tell the jury again how many, first, what's the difference between a fragment and a projectile, if there is a difference?
So a projectile is sort of a general term. That general term could refer to a fragment. It could refer to a full bullet. It could refer to a part of a bullet, or it could refer to a part of a bullet jacket. To explain that a little deeper, a bullet is normally, or as we're talking about it here, it's a lead core. It has a jacket around it, and that jacket is the part of the bullet that touches the inside of the barrel of the weapon. The lead core is there for weight purposes. It gives it mass so that when it's fired, it will fly straight. And a fragment is generally some form of not being an entire bullet or bullet jacket.
So if you test fired a 9mm round into, I think it's water that you guys shoot into, and then you get a little net and scoop it out, that's going to be the projectile. There can be no fragments because it'll be intact. You hit the water, it's not malformed, or am I misunderstanding?
It can become partially malformed. It can expand. If it's a jacketed hollow point, it can expand. But generally speaking, a bullet, the largest part of the bullet will come out of that water tank in some form of mostly intact manner.
But if I fire a shot and it hits a metal support beam and that projectile breaks into 3 pieces, those are 3 fragments of the projectile.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. How many fragments were you given to analyze in your work in this case?
So fragments or bullets?
My question is fragments.
Fragments. Okay. So based off of my notes, I have 3, what I would, based off of weight, consider partial bullets, what I would consider fragments. One of those is a lead core. The other 2 are copper metal jacketed fragments.
And were all 3 of those fragments that you received from the medical examiner?
One of them was from, it's noted as fragment near vehicle. And one of the fragments was from left buttocks. The third one, which is the lead core, is noted from right anterior abdominal wall.
So 2 from the deceased, 1 from the ground next to the vehicle, whatever the vehicle is.
Correct.
Okay. There are like 5 boxes in that bag.
Yes.
How does 3 turn into 5? Or are there some things in there that you didn't analyze? Because those aren't the shell casings. And let me give the exhibit number. So we're talking, is that 189?
This is states 189.
Yeah, 189. There are 5 boxes in there, and you talked about 3 fragments.
Yes. So based upon, so looking at item 3, which is A, B, C, D, and E, there are, based upon weight, there are 3 there that I would consider a full or almost complete bullet. One that is a lead core, that was the unsuitable item, and then 1 is the fragment, much smaller part.
So 3, we're going to call them intact bullets. They may be a little messed up, but intact bullets. Those 3 came from where?
Those were all fired from 1 gun.
Okay, but they were found where?
Yes.
Fair answer.
Yes. One of those is noted as right psoas muscle. 1 is right neck, and 1 is left arm.
Okay, all from the deceased.
Correct.
Got it. So from the deceased, you analyzed 5 pieces of metal, 3 of which were more or less intact bullets. 1 was a lead core, and 1 was, we'll call it a fragment.
That's correct.
And then there's a 6th piece of metal out there, and that's the fragment from the ground outside the vehicle.
Correct.
Thank you for clearing that up.
And I apologize to the court for mixing that extra fragment up. in there.
I may have been mislistening, and so you don't need to own that. Is it your role to determine how many shots were fired at the scene? In this case?
No, I can give you, based upon what I see, the minimum number of shots that were fired from a specific gun. I can't give you timeline of that. And I can't say that there aren't others out there that weren't recovered. I can just say of the ones I analyzed, that those were all fired from a single gun.
So what is the minimum number of rounds fired from the same gun in the evidence you were given to analyze?
Based upon bullets or cartridge cases?
Well, what's the maximum number of trigger pulls you could attest to for the same gun?
Based upon the cartridge cases, there are 4. So there were 4 9mm cartridge cases, all from one gun. So I can say that gun was fired, whatever gun that is, was fired at least 4 times.
Okay, and the number of bullets, there are 3 that you can link to the same gun.
Yeah, based upon weight, there are 3 that appear as again I said, most of or all of a bullet. The lead core is just ballparking the weight here. It's about 75, 80% of a bullet. And then the other smaller fragments could be parts of that lead core. In other words, their metal jackets, they could have been originally wrapped around that lead core to make up the majority or all of the weight.
Are you able to say if the shell casings that you've analyzed all came from the same gun, were fired from the same gun that the bullets were fired from? Because you said 3 bullets, same gun, 4 shell casings, same gun. Are you able to say those all came together from the same gun?
I cannot. I can say that they're consistent with the same type based upon the class characteristics that I spoke of, but I cannot connect a particular bullet to a particular cartridge case.
And is that generally the case in ballistics analysis, or there's something funky about this case where you can't connect the 3 bullets with the 4 shell casings?
No, that's normal. Normally, the bullets, and it's not an analysis we perform in terms of comparing a bullet to what we would call cartridge case mouth marks. Those would be the marks that are theoretically left by the cartridge case when that bullet pulls out of it. That's not something that's typically performed because almost always those marks are overridden by the fact that that bullet goes down the barrel of a weapon.
Okay. Mr. Rao, do you have more questions for Mr. Leopard?
No, Judge.
Ms. Feely?
No.
All right, Mr. Leopard, thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, while I met with the lawyers to discuss your good questions, we concluded that the next witness we would not be able to finish in the about 10 minutes that we have. So we're going to end a little early. Mr. Abate explained to me that we have 2-point-something witnesses left. 2 you haven't heard from, and then Detective McClure needs to come back. And through him, the state intends to play the interview, a recording of the interview between McClure and Mr. Williams. And the state will rest. They'll put that up in whatever order they think is appropriate. So you'll see McClure again and 2 other witnesses. One will be very brief. One will be about as long as Mr. Leopard, maybe a little less, depending on your questions. And then the state plans to rest. They're free to change that forecast. I'm not binding them in any way. That's what they shared with me, which I want to share with you. And then after the state rests, we'll need to take a break because there are legal issues that come up when one side rests. And then I'll turn to Ms. Feely and we'll see if the defense is presenting any evidence. They have no burden. And so it may well be that Ms. Feely says, nope, you've heard all the evidence that you're going to hear in this case. And then we'll move on to closing arguments. But the defense has a right and an ability to present evidence. And so Ms. Feely says, yep, our first witness is X, and X can come to the stand. You will get the case tomorrow to begin your deliberations. It's moving a little less fast than we thought yesterday. Sometimes witness testimony expands, and that's what happened with Detective McClure. So I would love it if you all could be here at 9 tomorrow morning. No drug court for me tomorrow, so I'll be ready to go at 9 a.m. Just making sure there's nothing on the calendar there. Nope, just you guys. So whatever you did yesterday to be here on time, almost all of you, be here on time again, and we'll get started as close to 9 as we can. Any logistical questions? Assuming last night you just followed the election results and things other than this case, do the same. No outside research. Don't talk to people about your service as a juror. And we will see you back at 9 o'clock. Okay? Good luck with the graduation. Congratulations to your family.
All right, yes.
I would like to do the charge conference right now. I don't think it will take very long, but that way we don't have to create a break tomorrow. I'm happy to have it taken down if you want it taken down. Happy to have Mr. Williams stay here. You guys consult for a second. I need to print it out so you have a hard copy. I've got a draft, and I know I wasn't able to circulate it, but other than the justification charges, I don't think there's much controversial. And I don't mean to suggest that's controversial either, but it's something where I'm guessing we'll have a little bit of back and forth. Are you able to do the charge conference now, Mr. Abate?
Yes, sir, of course.
Ms. Feely?
Yeah.
All right, well, I go print it out, talk with your client, and then let me know if you want, are you able to stay, Ms. Rivers, if that's the request? Okay, whether you want it taken down and whether you want Mr. Williams here, those are joint options, but you can let me know when I come back.
Okay. You did it. Sorry. I'm scared. Okay.
You guys have been very efficient. I blame it on the equipment. I mean, it was slow because you kept trying to play stuff. It's Spock.